Chapter 747. Seeing this, Qin Yining finally understood what was going on. Was Qiu Feishan planning to kill two birds with one stone, or kill many birds with one stone? Deceiving her to this point to talk about a big cooperation, she somewhat believed this sentence. Otherwise, the four-way signal would not have used all means to send money to the army in the old capital. But what about the rest? Qin Yining had seen many people who were good at scheming, but Qiu Feishan was the only woman who was as unpredictable as her. Even she was forced to be led by the nose several times. Was this scene of punishing Qiu Feishan deliberately played by Qiu Feishan for her to see? She wanted to let her know that in order to express her sincerity, Qiu Feishan, who had not returned to Jinchuan for a long time for various reasons, had come back and was fighting with her second uncle who was in power, and so fiercely. Qin Yining was expressionless, making up his mind not to show his thoughts. At this time, not far away, there was the sound of beating boards and Qiu Feishan's wails. Qiu Yuanqing angrily said, "Qiu Feishan, do you really not care about your cousin's life?" Qiu Feishan said, "Second uncle, don't push the problem to me. If it weren't for you, Cousin Zhen wouldn't have done such a thing. Qiu family has ancestral teachings and family rules. If you really violate the family rules, you can only be punished according to the ancestral rules. It's not like I care about Cousin's life. Cousin can be exempted from punishment." Qiu Yuanqing's face turned red, but he couldn't refute. Qiu Feishan's tone was the same as Qin Yining's tone just now. He couldn't help but curse in his heart again. This kind of smart woman was the most annoying. "I don't want to argue with you, but you killed your own family for outsiders. I will definitely report this matter to the elders." "Second uncle, why don't you report to grandfather? Why hasn't my grandfather appeared in the past 2 years?" Qiu Feishan's tone suddenly became sharp, and her eyes were unprecedentedly sharp. Compared with her indifferent appearance just now, Qiu Feishan's aura was as cold as ice, completely different from her usual gentle appearance. Qin Yining was a little surprised that Qiu Feishan would be so anxious when talking about the Qiu clan's patriarch who had been in seclusion for more than 2 years. It seemed that the Qiu family's waters were very deep. What was the reason for the family head seclusion? Why did Qiu Feishan not return to Sword Creek for more than 2 years? Why did she expand the four-way shop in recent years and even extend her tentacles to the imperial court? All of these questions were worth investigating. While Qin Yining is deep in thought, someone has already replied to Qiu Feishan's words. "Miss, Qiu Feishan has fainted. Do you need a doctor?" Qiu Feishan looked at the person lying motionless on the ground in the distance. According to the rules of the clan, it is common sense for those who violate the rules to be kicked out. There's no need to call a doctor. "Yes." The attendant very obediently returned to stand behind Qiu Feishan. Qiu Feishan was lying on the ground, and no one cared about her. Qiu Yuanqing was just about to order someone to save Qiu Feishan and send her to a doctor. But on second thought, he was worried that Qiu Feishan would insist that he was the one who instigated Qiu Feishan. Seeing Qiu Feishan end up like this, he felt guilty and decided to help a sinner of the clan. After all, the Qiu family has used the family law many times before, and he has never been soft-hearted. Thinking of this, Qiu Yuanqing dispelled the idea. Qiu Feishan unfolded the sandalwood fan in her hand and waved it, her clear eyes full of contempt. Then she took a step forward with her hands behind her back. Although her voice was not loud, it was enough for Qiu Yuanqing to hear clearly. Second uncle is also clear about the rules between the prominent family and the hidden family. As a prominent family, the Liu family has been abiding by the rules of their ancestors for 200 years, maintaining a neutral position in the imperial court. Only in this way can the prominent family stand tall. However, the new head of the family, Liu Heng, has broken the balance. He has already expressed his support for Li Qitian in the imperial court, so the Liu family will live and die with Li Qitian. The prominent family is already in decline. According to the rules of our ancestors, it is time for our hidden family to replace them. Otherwise, if we wait for others to take action to end the prominent family, then it will truly be the end. The rules set by our ancestors are that the sun rises and the moon falls the moon rises and the sun hides, so that the bloodline of our entire family will not fall. The reason why I invited the Prince Zhongshuan is to follow the rules of our ancestors, to stand firm in the imperial court, and to prepare for the transformation of the hidden family into a prominent family. Qiu Feishan raised her eyebrows and looked at Qiu Yuanqing, but second uncle disregarded the development of the clan and repeatedly offended my distinguished guest. Does second uncle want to be the center of the Qiu family? Who do you think we should choose? Qiu Yuanqing sneered. You chose Prince Zhongshuan, but does the family have to approve of him? There are a few heroes in the world today. Today is one. Prince Zhongshuan is one. Prince Consort Ji, who is currently fighting with the Taitan, is one, and Si Qin of the Taitan is also one. Si Qin is an outsider, so if we don't consider him, then there are only 3 people left. Among the 3, Prince Zhongshuan is the most capable and resourceful. Not only does he have the ability to kill, but he also has a benevolent heart. This kind of person is most worthy of our support. If we don't choose him, does second uncle have other candidates? Does second uncle want to completely disregard the interests of the family because of his own personal interests? Speaking to here, Qiu Feishan suddenly turned to Qin Yining. She lifted the hem of her clothes and knelt down, respectfully giving a big bow. The attendants and guards who came with Qiu Feishan also dismounted and knelt down together. Their movements were neat and uniform. Although it was silent, it was particularly imposing. Qiu Feishan's forehead was on the ground, and she firmly kowtowed 3 times, then said, Princess, I represent the Qiu family to express our support to Prince Zhongshuan and Princess. From now on, I will follow you loyally and do my best. I ask everyone here to bear witness to this. The people who followed Qiu Feishan also knelt down. At this time, Qin Yining was stunned in place, unable to say a word. The concept of prominent families and hidden families that Qiu Feishan mentioned just now was spinning in her mind. So the Liu family and the Qiu family actually had this kind of relationship. Don't look at how one of them had the surname Liu and the other had the surname Qiu. Dating back more than 100 years ago, perhaps they both had the surname Liu or Qiu, or perhaps they both had other surnames. No matter what their surnames were, this family's bloodline had been passed down. The 2 surnames came from the same family. One part was prominent and the other part was hidden. Both sides developed their own forces. Once the prominent families fell, the hidden families could immediately replace them. They could protect the prominent families and even be the driving force to crush the prominent families. In this way, they could alternately preserve the strength of the family. The ancient people cared about family and surname. Few people could change their surname like this. But the Liu family and the Qiu family could do it according to the rules of their ancestors. Looking at Qiu Feishan in front of her, Qin Yining once again felt that she had fallen into a trap. Qiu Feishan was forcing the Prince Zhongshuan's faction to bind with them. The Qiu family was so powerful. If Qiu Feishan took the initiative to show goodwill, would she and Pang Xiao be stupid enough to push people away? If they push people away, what if they chose another opponent? Therefore, after the last time the Sidong army sponsored the army, they once again fell into Qiu Feishan's net. Originally, this was a mutually beneficial matter, so there was nothing to lose. But this way of making them submit really made Qin Yining unhappy. Just as Qin Yining was at a loss, the sound of wheels rolling suddenly came from the empty and quiet valley. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound. They saw a black flat-headed carriage, surrounded by a group of awe-inspiring men slowly coming over. Qin Yining did not see anything different about the carriage. But Qiu Feishan, who was kneeling on the ground, suddenly stood up. She looked at the carriage with eyes full of surprise and quickly went to greet it. Qiu Yuanqing was also shocked and quickly went to greet it. When the carriage came closer, Qin Yining found that the Qiu family emblem on the carriage was different from the one he saw a few days ago. Perhaps the golden leaf on the emblem represented the identity of the Qiu family's patriarch? Grandfather. The carriage stopped. Before the people inside could get off, Qiu Feishan ran over to greet them. At this time, it could be seen that Qiu Feishan was a young and lively girl. Her cheerful appearance could not be hidden. In contrast, Qiu Yuanqing seemed a bit more serious. He did not seem happy, and Qin Yining caught a hint of panic on his face. "Grandfather, is it you? Are you all right?" Qiu Feishan stood in front of the carriage and anxiously lifted the curtain. But before her slender and fair hand could touch the curtain, the dark blue curtain had already been lifted by an old hand. A white-haired old man in a brown robe with a round collar and large sleeves was sitting inside, looking at Qiu Feishan disapprovingly. Qiu Feishan did not notice the old man's displeasure and called out in surprise, "Grandfather!" Qiu Yuanqing also smiled at this time. "Father, you came out?" Qiu Guang gave Qiu Yuanqing a meaningful look. That look was too sharp, and before he said anything, Qiu Yuanqing immediately lowered his head in fear. Qiu Feishan saw Qiu Yuanqing like this, and her smile became even brighter. "Grandfather, why are you here? Your granddaughter helped you get off the carriage? How had you been these 2 years?" Qiu Feishan had lost contact with Qiu Guang for 2 whole years. She lost her parents when she was young and was raised by her grandfather, so the relationship between her and Qiu Guang was naturally deep. Qiu Feishan did business and often went out, so Qiu Feishan and Qiu Guang had their own secret code to prevent others from pretending to be each other. However, 2 years ago, the code on the letter disappeared. He tried to fool her several times, but she did not fall for it. Not long after, the main family spread the news that Qiu Guang was thinking about something and had to go into seclusion to think. Qiu Feishan was anxious because she knew what kind of personality her second uncle had. If he did not do well, he would seize power and harm her grandfather. Chapter 748. Qiu Feishan had always guessed that something had happened to her grandfather, and after failing to contact him several times, she was even more certain of this idea. Her father was the eldest son of the first wife, and his death was very strange. Coupled with the huge roots of the Qiu family in Jianchuan, and even the entire Shu lands, she would not believe that no one coveted the position of the head of the family. As time passed, she had not received any news from her grandfather, so she began to do her best to develop the four-way pass, and finally achieve today's situation, and also seize the opportunity when the Liu family changed. She just did not expect that her grandfather was still alive. This good news made Qiu Feishan so happy that she forgot to be calm, and only cared about asking Qiu Guang about the situation. "Grandfather, how have you been these 2 years? Are you really in seclusion? Or is there someone who is against you? I haven't received any news from you in these 2 years, nor have I seen you. I'm really worried to death." Qin Yining could see that Qiu Feishan was sincere to her grandfather, but Qiu Guang did not seem to like being close to Qiu Feishan and was very cold. Qiu Feishan pulled him to talk, but Qiu Guang was expressionless and walked in front of a group of people with his hands behind his back, completely ignoring Qiu Feishan's words. When Qin Yining saw Qiu Guang frowning and looking coldly at Qiu Feishan, she felt an inexplicable sense of panic in her heart. This kind of sincerity in exchange for the cold treatment of a loved one, she had experienced it before, so she could particularly empathize with it. Seeing Qiu Guang leading Qiu Yuanqing, Qiu Feishan, and a group of people behind him, Qin Yining could not help but be vigilant in her heart. Not only her, Jinghu Wei and the others also felt Qiu Guang's hostility and tightened their grip on their weapons. Mu Jinghu and Ji Yun put their hands on the soft swords at their waists, one on the left and one on the right, next to Qin Yining. Qiu Guang walked closer and stood 3 feet away from Qin Yining and cupped his hands. "Prince Zhongshuan's consort, this humble one has long heard of your name." The coldness and disdain in his words were very obvious, causing Qiu Yuanqing and Qiu Feishan to be stunned. Qiu Yuanqing breathed a sigh of relief. He thought that the old thing would bear a grudge against him for putting him under house arrest and would punish him after escaping. He did not expect the old thing to refute the opinion of his beloved granddaughter. Qiu Guang's useful him, and more importantly, this time, the old thing, and this time, the old thing and him being on the same person because of his usefulness and he would be on his hims, and he would be on his beeses as him, to be useful's him, to useful, ans him to be of him, being of him, useful s's him, useful, ans to support him, useful's him, to let him. Qiu Yuanqing's mind was racing, but it only took a blink of an eye. Seeing Qiu Guang's irreverent attitude, Qin Yining chuckled and raised her eyebrows, asking, "Are you Mr. Qiu, the head of the Qiu family?" "That's me." Qiu Guang's face hung a bit of a businessman's polite smile, and said, "Princess, please forgive me. My granddaughter is young, and this little girl has no knowledge and doesn't know the rules. What she said just now was just a child's play. Please don't take it seriously." In one sentence, he negated the series of decisions made by Qiu Feishan and crushed the overwhelming advantage that Qiu Feishan had obtained with great difficulty under his feet. Qiu Feishan's beautiful eyes widened in shock, crystal-clear tears in her eyes, and her red lips opened and closed for a long time before she said, "Grandfather Feishan, do you know what your identity is?" Qiu Guang's voice had the hoarseness of an old man, and his tone was serious. "Grandfather, what do you mean by this? This is the family's secret. How can you casually tell outsiders?" "Grandfather, there are no outsiders here. Prince Zhongshuan is the best candidate for our family support, and Prince Zhongshuan's consort knows the reason for this. Presumptuous, where the family's future will go, does a little girl like you have to tell us what to do? I, the family's head, am still here. You want the family's children to listen to a woman like you?" Qiu Yuanqing fiercely flicked his sleeves, and the wide sleeves made a sound, but it was like a slap to Qiu Feishan's face. Qiu Feishan staggered 2 steps, and her originally tall and straight figure seemed to have been pulled out of her bones. She lost her strength and fell to the ground, 2 lines of clear tears rolling down her beautiful face. Qiu Guang angrily said, "You've been wild enough. You should take care of your heart. I've indulged you too much. That's why you have such a big problem. Come. Yes. Take the eldest miss away." Turning to Qiu Feishan, he said, "I will find a good family for you as soon as possible. In the future, you will take care of your husband and children and study needlework well. Do your part well." Qiu Feishan's face was pale, and her arms were tied behind her back, but she didn't know how to struggle. She was heartbroken and crying, and was pushed in the direction of the carriage. Qiu Feishan's personal maidservant, Being, covered her mouth and cried. She felt wrong for her mistress, but didn't dare to say it out loud. She only chased after the big man who was holding Qiu Feishan. "Be respectful. Don't be rude to the eldest miss." Looking at Qiu Feishan's staggering back, Qin Yining's eyebrows tightly knit together. Qiu Guang's meaning was too clear. The original sin of all this was not because Qiu Feishan didn't do well, nor was it because Qiu Feishan made the wrong choice, but because Qiu Feishan was a woman. Because this woman stole the limelight of the men in the family. No matter how much Qiu Guang thought highly of Qiu Feishan's ability, it was impossible for him to let her take charge of the Qiu family. In other words, no matter how hard Qiu Feishan worked, no matter how well she did, in the end, she couldn't escape the fate of being blindfolded by marriage. This was the world's greatest malice to a woman. No matter how well she did, in the end, she would be suppressed and despised by the man. Even if she did well, it would hurt the man's self-esteem and make the man angry out of shame and give the woman a bad name for not respecting women. Qin Yining pursed her lips. Regardless of Qiu Feishan's previous scheme against her and Pang Xiao, she had to be convinced by Qiu Feishan's wisdom. In terms of ability, she also admired Qiu Feishan. If they didn't stand on the opposite side and could talk about cooperation, Qin Yining even thought that she and Qiu Feishan could be friends because they were the same kind of women. But she was much luckier than Qiu Feishan. Because her father wouldn't bury her efforts like Qiu Guang, he wouldn't take advantage of her at home and say that she didn't abide by the virtues of a woman. Not to mention her husband, who treated her like a treasure in his heart. Even if he was worried about her and didn't want her to come out, it was only because he was afraid that she would be in danger. It was never because a woman couldn't make decisions or something like that. When Qin Yining saw Qiu Feishan being stuffed into the carriage, Bing Tang, Ji Yun, and Mu Jinghu beside her all showed some sympathy. Especially Mu Jinghu. There was a bit of confusion in his eyes, but the expression on his face was clearly sympathetic. He covered his heart with one hand, and no one knew what he was thinking. Qin Yining said, "In that case, I won't force you." "Naturally, I won't force you, so I'll take my leave. Old Master Qiu, please order your men to let us go." Now they were surrounded by Qiu Yuanqing's men and Qiu Feishan's men. The remaining dozens of people were also brought by Qiu Guang. The number of enemies was huge, and Qin Yining wouldn't let the guard around her take the risk. Anyway, she was led here by Qiu Feishan. Since the family didn't accept Qiu Feishan's suggestion, they should be allowed to leave safely. But who would have thought that Qiu Guang revealed a polite smile full of deep meaning and cupped his hands? "Of course we will let you go. It's just that princess consort came from afar, and this old man didn't take good care of you these days. Princess consort, please stay for a few more days, and let this old man play the role of a host." Qiu Yuanqing was overjoyed. Sure enough, he had the same idea as Qiu Guang. Qin Yining's face instantly tensed up, and the people around him also nervously readied their weapons, ready to attack. "Old Master Qiu, what do you mean? Do you want to put me under house arrest again?" "There's no need to say such unpleasant words." Qiu Guang smiled and said, "It's natural to have friends from afar. Princess Consort is a famous woman. It's our Qiu family's blessing to have you come to our small place. Princess Consort, please don't be so polite." After saying that, he raised his hand and waved. Qiu Guang's men immediately came forward, wanting to invite Qin Yining back to the Qiu family. These men were not like Qiu Yuanqing's men, whose abilities were mixed. Upon closer inspection, although they were all strong men, their eyes were bright and their acupoints were bulging. At one glance, one could tell that they were not weaker than Jinghu Wei, and two of them were even nimble and had good lightness skills. "Stop! How dare you? Are you really going to rebel?" Qin Yining was shielded by Mu Jinghu, who pulled her back and whispered, "These people are easy to deal with. They're completely different from the previous ones. What are our chances of winning? If I escape with you alone, we have a 90% chance of winning. But there are so many of us." Qin Yining was so shocked that his face turned pale. Mu Jinghu said, "I can't protect everyone, and I only promised Wu Fox to protect you. No, if I escape, these people will be dead." As they spoke, they had already retreated a few feet and were about to board the carriage. Qiu Yuanqing was shocked and pointed in Qin Yining's direction. "Don't let her get on the carriage." At his command, Qiu Yuanqing's men rushed forward like a tidal wave. Although they were a group of people with average martial arts skills, they could not control so many people. Jinghu Wei, Jing Zhe, and the rest fell into the most difficult and desperate situation. With their backs facing Qin Yining, they protected her in a circle. Each of them had to face more than 3 enemies. They could not retreat or fall, and could only fight with all their might. At this time, they could not care less about not killing. In a life-and-death situation, it was either you die or I die. How could they not fight with all their might? But the problem was that the other party had too many people, and they were constantly using attrition tactics to exhaust their strength. Other than Mu Jinghu, who was protecting Qin Yining, Jian had already drawn her soft sword to fight, and Bingtang had almost used up the itchy powder and anesthetic powder. Chapter 749. Qin Yining pursed his lips and shook his head with red eyes. "No, we came here together, so we have to go back together. I can't leave you behind. If I leave now, what kind of person would I be? Princess Consort, don't be stubborn. They're here to catch you. If you leave, we'll at most be tied up and brought back to the Qiu family. You can think of a way to save us after you leave Jianchuan." Bingtang persuaded earnestly. Although she was serious, she was not sure if the Qiu family would let them go. But no matter what, they would not allow anything to happen to Qin Yining. After Qin Yining was buried, disappeared, and kidnapped to Tatar, Bingtang regretted it so much. Alarm bells were ringing in her heart. She would never allow such a thing to happen again. Mu Jinghu held Qin Yining's wrist and said in a low voice, "No matter whether you agree or not, I will take you away first." Qin Yining's face was pale. No, even if we leave first, we can't leave the city. We didn't play the Sichuan card. But if I take you away and go around the city, they won't be able to catch us. While Qin Yining, Mu Jinghu, and Bing Tang were arguing in low voices, Qiu Yuanqing walked to Qiu Guang and asked softly, "Father, what are you going to do with Prince Zhongshan's consort after we catch her?" Qiu Guang glanced at Qiu Yuanqing and said, "Have you forgotten what you did?" Qiu Yuanqing's pupils contracted and his body stiffened. He thought that this old man had already let bygones be bygones. After all, he was his only son. If he didn't pass the position of the family head to him, who else could it be? Who would have thought that it was not that he had let bygones be bygones? This old man was still holding back his anger. Qiu Yuanqing's face was gloomy, and he looked down without saying a word. He was full of resentment towards Qiu Guang. At such an old age, he had always held on to power and refused to let go. He had been waiting since he was in his prime, and now he was about to be ridden on by a little girl. As a father, he did not think of making plans for his son. Instead, he encouraged that little girl's prestige. Today, the old thing did catch Qiu Feishan, but Qiu Feishan wanted to kill Qiu Feizhen. She had committed so many crimes, but the old thing was not willing to punish her severely. Instead, he caught her and planned to let her get married. His heart was so biased that it had no boundaries. Under such harsh circumstances, how could he not plan for himself? Even if he had put his father under house arrest, he had not mistreated him when he was locked up. Didn't this old thing still manage to escape in one piece? A soft-hearted person was bound to suffer. If he had known earlier, he would have. Qiu Yuanqing suppressed the anger in his heart and lowered his head without saying a word. Qiu Guang did not look sideways, focusing on the situation within the battle circle. At this moment, they suddenly felt the ground beneath their feet tremble slightly. Sichuan City was a place with frequent earthquakes. After such a slight tremor, it was likely to be followed by a strong earthquake. Qiu Guang's entourage tensed up, and Qiu Yuanqing was also slightly flustered. Everyone tacitly moved away from the surrounding mountain walls and ran towards the open space. Who knew that at this moment, Qiu Guang vaguely heard a rumbling sound. It seemed to be the sound of horse hooves stamping on the ground, and the tremor on the ground seemed to be getting more and more obvious. Father, you quickly look." Qiu Yuanqing's eyes stared behind Qiu Guang, his finger trembling as he pointed there. Qiu Guang, like everyone else, looked towards the source of the sound, only to see a black mass of soldiers and horses quickly pressing over. Those soldiers were dressed in black armor, with red tassels on their heads. They sat upright on their horses, holding leather shields in their hands. They were in a neat formation, and their speed was very fast, like a black flood, aggressively pouring into the valley. As far as the eye could see, it was impossible to tell how many soldiers and horses they had. At least 10,000 people, right? But the most frightening thing was that this army of more than 10,000 people, other than the sound of horses, armor, and footsteps, no one spoke. The people besieging Qin Yining had already stopped. The pressure on Jingzhe and Jinghu Wei was reduced, and they hurriedly retreated to Qin Yining's side. Qin Yining looked in the direction of the imposing soldiers and horses, and some unrealistic guesses and fantasies suddenly appeared in his mind. When the soldiers and horses came close, they suddenly split into a goose formation to surround them. The boxers and men of sacrifice of the Qiu family had never seen such a scene. They were so scared that their legs almost gave out. They gathered together and stood back to back. They almost couldn't hold the sticks and swords in their hands. How could they spare any energy to catch Qin Yining? Qiu Yuanqing's legs also went soft, and if not for his face, he would have fallen to the ground. Qiu Feishan also jumped off the carriage while everyone was still in a daze, looking in horror at the encirclement that was gradually closing in around them. The black tide parted to both sides, and a general in black armor, holding a long sword with red tassels and riding a black horse, quickly came over. As soon as he saw him, Qin Yining's eyes widened in surprise, and he happily shouted, "Jishi!" Pang Zhao's face was as calm as water, and his eyes looked across the chaotic battlefield. When he saw Qin Yining surrounded, he relaxed a little. He didn't care how many people were in front of him, and he immediately shook the reins and urged the horse to rush over. The black horse was very aggressive, and its blade was shining with cold light. Its anger and killing intent seemed to pierce the people in front of it, and the Qiu family members only dared to scream and hide in fear. The distance was not far, so Pang Xiao, Hu Zi, and a few of his trusted subordinates arrived in front of Qin Yining in a few steps. He picked up Qin Yining's slender waist and placed her in front of him. When his big hand held her waist, he touched her ribs. Pang Xiao's face sank. "You've lost weight." Qin Yining's heart, which had been raised when she was running away from the Qiu family, finally returned to its original place. She stared blankly at Pang Xiao, and for a moment, she didn't know what to say. Every time she was at the end of the road, Pang Xiao would always appear in front of her like a god and save her from the most dangerous and urgent situation. Whether it was when he took the arrow for her in Dian, or when he came forward to save her mother, or when she was trapped in Shiyu, he would rather go against the imperial order to take her back, or now. It seemed that he could sense her danger every time and came to her side at the most appropriate time. At this time, the emotion and excitement could not be understood by people who had never experienced it. There was the joy of surviving a disaster, but more than that, there was a love for this person that was about to overflow. Jishi. Her voice trembled, and her voice was hoarse. She put her arms around his neck and obediently leaned her face on his shoulder. Hearing that she was almost crying, Pang Xiao's heart ached even more. His ape arm hugged her tightly, and his big hand pressed her into his arms. "I shouldn't have let you out. I'm fine. Everything was a false alarm. That was also a false alarm. I won't let go of anyone who dares to hurt you." Pang Xiao waved the long knife with one arm, and with a whoosh sound, the tip of the knife pointed at Qiu Yuanqing, Qiu Guang, and the others. "What do you mean by kidnapping this king's princess?" Qiu Yuanqing widened his eyes in horror. It was not that he was a coward, but Pang Xiao's demonic aura was really not something that ordinary people could bear. Qiu Guang still looked like an immortal, and his tightly knitted brows also relaxed. He stepped forward and cupped his hands. "This must be Prince Zhongshuan? It's really better to meet you than to hear about you." "Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you." Pang Xiao hugged Qin Yining and sat upright on the horse, not saying a word. He did not move, and the 10,000 soldiers he brought also did not move. They were in formation with an imposing aura, as if once Pang Xiao gave the order, they would swarm forward and trample everyone into meat paste. The people around Qiu Guang almost instinctively knelt down. If Qiu Yuanqing did not have two loyal subordinates on his left and right, he would also have knelt down now. Seeing that Pang Xiao did not speak, Qiu Guang could not help but stroke his beard and laugh, and then said loudly, "Good. You are indeed imposing. But according to this old man's knowledge, Prince Zhongshuan should be guarding the army camp at this time, and there is no news from the court about the deployment of troops. Without the Tiger Tally, Wang Yi deployed troops without permission. Could it be that Wang Yi is disloyal to your majesty and wants to rebel?" This accusation was as heavy as Mount Tai, and it made Qin Yining's heart full of worry. Li Qiqian was busy dealing with the Taitan, but he did not forget to catch Pang Xiao's mistakes at any time. When he went to the old capital to maintain stability, Pang Xiao had always been on guard against the Yuchi Yin causing trouble, so he was often restrained by many sides. But this time, for the sake of Qin Yining, he deployed troops without permission. No matter how Li Qiqian found out about this, the final result would be to confirm Pang Xiao's disloyalty. Moreover, war required money. Bringing 10,000 soldiers to Jinchuan, food and horses along the way would be a large expense. Moreover, there was no telling if there would be a fire in the old capital. The more Qin Yining thought about it, the more worried he became, and his body could not help but tense up. Pang Xiao's large hand patted Qin Yining's shoulder comfortingly, and he chuckled. The head of the Qiu family really lives up to his reputation. The ability of the guilty party to complain first, and the ability to play the blame game is truly first-rate. This king's princess was deceived by your family to be placed under house arrest, and she was even assassinated and hunted down. This king is a minister arranged by the imperial court to stabilize the situation in the south, but there are people who deliberately came to harm the princess. Could it be that you are not planning to sow discord between this king and his sworn brother? This king's troops have been stationed outside the city for 3 days, but Jinchuan Pass not only refused to let them go, but they also did not look at the travel permit or the official's warrant to enter and leave. They actually used the Qiu family's entry and exit passes as the standard. Dare I ask, is this the world of the Zhou or your Qiu family's world? Your Qiu family is here to stop the emperor. This king is suppressing the chaos in the imperial court by eliminating you today. Pang Zhao's words made the soldiers' blood boil. They all raised the weapons in their hands and shouted in unison, their roars shaking the heavens. At this time, the frightened Qiu family members recovered from their shock, and they were a little shocked to think, how did these soldiers and horses get in? Qiu Yuanqing thought about the fact that he did not want to admit, but had to admit, and stuttered, could it be that you all came in through Jinchuan Pass? Huzi, who was hugging Bing Tang on horseback, laughed when he heard this. Only you people would treat that pass as a natural mode, but it's still like window paper that can be broken with a poke. Wang Yi knows how to eat, and he knows how to fight. You didn't really think that no one could come in, did you? Chapter 750. That's why today, we brothers will catch them like a turtle in a jar. Another elite tiger guard laughed in agreement. The soldiers were different from Jinghu Wei. They were still standing solemnly with awe-inspiring momentum. Jinghu Wei was Pang Zhao's private soldier, but the army was under the control of Pang Zhao. Because of Pang Zhao's strict management of the army, it was common sense that soldiers would not disarm until the general gave the order. Even if they thought the same as Jinghu Wei, they still did not move until they heard Pang Zhao's order. Therefore, when Xiu Guang and Xiu Yuanqing were ridiculed and wanted to scold back, they were stopped by the soldiers who were like stone and clay statues. Xiu Yuanqing's legs were so weak that he almost knelt down. If he did not want to lose face, he would have fainted. Xiu Guang was very calm. Prince Zhongshuan is not afraid after making such a big move. It seems that he really wants to rebel. Pang Zhao sneered and glanced at the direction they came from. The people who were surrounded by the cavalry stood on the ground and could not see what was outside the encirclement. But he was sitting on the horse and could see the thousands of soldiers gathered in the direction they came from. Magistrate Wu came with the soldiers, but he did not dare to go forward. Right now, the gates of Jinchuan Pass were guarded by the army, and there were 10,000 elite soldiers stationed outside the city gates. Just now, when they had forcefully broken through the city gates, Magistrate Wu was still trembling in fear. Although Magistrate Wu had a duty, he cherished his life even more. Seeing that the kidnapping of the princess by the Qiu family blew up, Magistrate Wu thought that it was because the Qiu family was too domineering. After all, as a magistrate, he had been suppressed by the Qiu family for so many years. But he thought that in the eyes of outsiders, he was tied to the Qiu family. Magistrate Wu couldn't help but feel a little helpless. It seemed that the best way for him to do this was to wait and see what would happen. He wanted to see if he should choose a new team. Therefore, the people of Magistrate Lu were so scared that they all hid behind the hen. Magistrate Wu, like chicks being intimidated by an eagle. They were so happy that they couldn't come out. Pang Zhao calmly replied to Qiu Guang, "You traitors! How dare you question the imperial court's training of soldiers? This king is the commander of the army. Can the soldiers and horses win battles without training? He was just bringing tens of thousands of people out for training. So what if you know? Could it be that this king used to train his soldiers like this? Who doesn't know?" Whether Li Qitian believed it or not, this reason was enough to shut Yu Yu's mouth. Qiu Guang was choked to the point that he almost couldn't breathe. When he thought about Pang Zhao's words about bringing a few outsiders out to practice, he knew that it was impossible for him to gain the upper hand today. However, Qiu Guang was not afraid. No matter what Wang Yi says, it makes sense. Anyway, the knife is in your hand. However, I also advise Wang Yi to think things through. Although the Chiu family has been entrenched in Jianchuan for more than 100 years, who knows if the Chiu family has no power in the imperial court? If you do anything to the Chiu family today, even if you leave Jianchuan, you won't get any benefits. The people of the Chiu family in the imperial court will ruin your reputation. Qin Yining sat in front of Pang Xiao and gently squeezed Pang Xiao's big hand around her waist. Xiao Guang was right. Training soldiers was training soldiers. However, if they used the training to launch a long-distance attack to wipe out the big clan that had been entrenched in Jianchuan for more than 200 years, the only way not to make a big deal out of it was to kill all the people in Jianchuan. However, Pang Xiao was not a thug. How could he kill so many people? Since he had to sacrifice 800 of his own to hurt 1,000 of the enemy, it was unwise to attack. Pang Xiao obviously had the same idea as Qin Yining. He squeezed her with his big hand. Aren't you being too nervous? Pang Xiao looked at Xiu Guang mockingly. If the army wants to flatten Jianchuan, they won't even give you a chance to speak. What's the point of killing all of you? As soon as Pang Xiao finished speaking, he raised his voice and said, "Withdraw." Xiu Yuanqing, who was paralyzed, was a little dumbfounded. It was so easy to scare them away. This old thing was still useful. Xiu Yuanqing stood up straight. His legs were no longer weak, and his cold sweat was no longer flowing. He looked at the retreating soldiers and horses and even snorted mockingly. Xiu Guang also heaved a sigh of relief. However, he was not as optimistic as Xiu Yuanqing. "What are you laughing at? Father, you're still the best. How can a ruffian like him touch a big clan like our Qiu family? Look, you just explained the reason and scare them away." "Stupid," Xiu Guang said in a low voice. "If we have the ability today, we'll kill him to prevent future troubles. He didn't leave any evidence behind and save the people as if they were wronged. When we return, we'll definitely report your majesty. At that time, no matter how many people we have in court, I'm afraid they won't be able to find a reason to defend us. At that time, the Qiu family will be in a lot more danger than being flattened by his army." What's wrong with this? Xiu Yuanqing's body was covered in cold sweat. Although he was refuting, he knew in his heart that the old man was right. Pang Xiao was his majesty's sworn brother. It was rumored that your majesty was afraid of him. However, looking at his actions, he clearly had a good relationship with your majesty. Thinking back to the past, if it was someone else, they would have been punished for the crime of defying imperial edicts. However, Pang Xiao resisted 33 imperial edicts and was still fine. This was not the era when dynasties had declined. The Zhou had just been established not long ago. Nobles like Pang Xiao, who was proficient in military affairs, were the most prosperous at the beginning of every dynasty. They could even flourish for several generations. Today, they had formed a grudge with Prince Zhongshuan's faction. Their Qiu family had completely fallen out with Pang Zhao's faction. They were afraid that Pang Zhao's descendants would endlessly seek revenge on them. Indeed, many of their descendants had left Jianchuan to develop outside. They also had people in the imperial court. However, distant water could not cause a nearby fire. The more he thought about it, the uglier Qiu Yuanqing's expression became. He was deeply aware of his mistake. "If I had known, I wouldn't have kidnapped that woman from the Pang family." Xiu Guang sneered. "What you did wrong? We will settle it later. Do you think I have forgotten?" Although he deliberately complied with his house arrest and wanted to come out long ago, Qiu Yuanqing's unfilial and stupid behavior still angered Xiu Guang. Qiu Yuanqing's pupils suddenly shrank. He hurriedly explained, "Father, I am not." Who would have thought that before he could finish, he suddenly heard a woman scream from the carriage behind him. "Eldest miss, who are you? Let go of my miss." Suddenly turning around, they saw a white shadow flash past the carriage. Qiu Feishan's personal maid fell to the ground, crying and shouting in a direction. Qiu Feishan was kidnapped. Furthermore, it was under the noses of so many of them. Moreover, when they turned around, Madame Gong had disappeared. What kind of martial arts was this? It must be Prince Zhongshuan's people, or it must be the princess's people. Previously, they broke into the house and burned the sixth branch's house. They also shaved Qiu Yuanming's head. Our family security is very tight, They must be the ones who brought them in so easily. Qiu Yuanqing roared. Qiu Guang pursed his lips, looking anxious, and said in a deep voice, "Quickly chase. They kidnapped Fei Shan. They must be angry with her." Qiu Guang quickly ordered the people behind him to chase. Qiu Yuanqing was very unhappy when he heard this. He secretly thought that the old man was still biased towards Qiu Feishan. It would be good if Qiu Feishan could die outside. But in the end, the head of the Qiu family had appeared, and the people of the Qiu family listened to his orders. The martial artists and guards under him did not hesitate to chase after the army. The old man also hurriedly got on the carriage. Not long after, they caught up with the army. They were still thinking about how to go around the front of the army to talk to Pang Xiao, but they did not expect that Pang Xiao and Qin Yining were walking at the back of the retreating army. Qiu Guang praised in his heart, and then ordered people to hurry up. When they were still some distance away from Pang Xiao, he shouted, "Wang Yi, since you are retreating, why did you kidnap this old man's granddaughter?" The army did not turn back, and continued to retreat in an orderly manner without being disturbed. Pang Xiao slowed down and turned his horse around with Qin Yining, saying, "Kidnap your granddaughter? Which eye of yours saw this king do that?" "It was your people who kidnapped Fei Shan. Master Qiu, this king advises you to be honest. Don't think that this king does not dare to destroy the Qiu family. You are really bold to frame this king." Qiu Yuanqing poked his head out from behind Qiu Guang. "But our people all saw it. It was a person in white who kidnapped her. White clothes? I don't know." Pang Xiao coldly glanced at them, then shook his reins and urged his horse to catch up with the army. The father and son of the Qiu family stood in place with the guards, unable to advance or retreat. "Father, is it really not their people?" "It must be, but they can't do anything if they don't admit it." Qiu Guang's eyes were filled with deep worry, although he was not satisfied with what Qiu Feishan did this time. Yes, but that was the girl he brought up. Qiu Guang really did not want to give the position of the head of the family to a woman, no matter how strong she was. But he never thought of letting Qiu Feishan die. If he brought her back, Qiu Feishan would at most be forced to marry or become a monk. At least she would not die. But this time, it was snatched away by the angry Pang Xiao. That might not be the case. Qiu Yuanqing saw the worry in Qiu Guang's eyes and became more and more jealous. His eyes became more and more ruthless, but when Qiu Guang turned around, he returned to normal. Qin Yining stretched his neck and looked back. Seeing that the Qiu family did not catch up, he could not help but chuckle. Mu Gongzi is really good at martial arts. To be able to save someone from so many people, and no one saw his face clearly. Pang Xiao laughed. Blockhead's martial arts are very good, and his lightness kung fu is even better. But why did you save Qiu Feishan? Qin Yining's eyes became cold, and he explained why Qiu Feishan pledged allegiance to him, and the relationship between the hidden family and the prominent family, and finally explained. Chapter 751. Pang Xiao smiled with interest. "How do you know that the Qiu family will let her become a nun? How do you know that her grandfather won't force her to marry?" "Marry in?" Qin Yining shook his head. "Qiu Feishan manages Sitong shop, and the power in her hands can't be separated. If she marries, how can the Qiu family let the Sitong shop lose its financial resources and become someone else's property? The only way to keep the property is to marry in or let Qiu Feishan not marry. But a good man, who wants to be his son-in-law? How can a person like Qiu Feishan be willing to marry in? If she doesn't marry in, she can only become a nun." "That's not necessarily true. She may not marry and be an old girl for the rest of her life." Pang Xiao smiled. "She won't be willing to do that, and the Qiu family won't let her do that. You haven't seen the Qiu family's contempt for women. Her second uncle is obviously the heir chosen by the Qiu family. Her second uncle's ability and wisdom are not as good as her, and there's also the problem of choosing sides. How can they allow a woman to order them around? It's not terrible to be an old girl, and it's not terrible to marry in. In Qiu Feishan's view, it's terrible to be at the mercy of others for the rest of your life and not be able to realize your ambitions." Pang Xiao heard this and couldn't help but kiss Qin Yining's cheek. "My sister, Yi, is smart. That kiss was very loud, and the proud voice when praising her was not small. Qin Yining was sure that the people around must have heard it, although those people were very upright and didn't look sideways. Qin Yining blushed and punched Pang Xiao, making Pang Xiao laugh. The reason why Qin Yining could understand Qiu Feishan so well was fundamentally because they were the same kind of people. She was luckier than Qiu Feishan because the people around her would not suppress her and despise her, and because she was less ambitious than Qiu Feishan. Qin Yining began to think about how to talk to Qiu Feishan so that they could win a win-win situation between Sidong's shop and Pang Xiao. With Qiu Guang's sudden appearance and all the trouble that followed, the Qiu family would definitely not support Pang Xiao. Regardless of who the Qiu family supported, to be able to pull the four-channel ship in as an ally was better than nothing. As for how the four-way shop was originally the Qiu family's business, how Qiu Feishan would completely separate the four-way shop from the Qiu family was not something she needed to calculate. She believed that Qiu Feishan already had an idea. The group of 10,000 people walked towards the city gate in an orderly manner. Although this was the outskirts of the city, in order not to disturb the people, they tried to walk in a less crowded area. However, with such a large group of people passing by, it naturally caused quite a commotion. Many people had already noticed the situation here, but they did not dare to come forward. Because of Sword Chuan City's strategic location, it had been peaceful for many years. And because of the Qiu family's protection, the commoners of Sword Chuan lived a much better life than the commoners outside. They were like the flowers of the Wen family, unable to withstand any big events. Now that a large group of strangers had entered Sword Chuan City, it caused these people to panic. Qin Yining asked Pang Xiao in a low voice, "Have you made any preparations? Will these people talk behind your back?" "Don't worry. The guards I left in front of the city gate have already explained to the commoners of Sword Chuan outside the city gate that I only came to pick up the princess. I will not hurt any commoners, nor will I do anything to rape or plunder. Presumably, when those people return to the city, the Qiu family will not be able to suppress this matter. You are still thoughtful." She was immersed in the joy of Pang Xiao coming to save her, but there were many things that she did not think of. The group quickly arrived at the gate of Sword Chuan City, and the group neatly lined up and left. Then the guards at the gate also withdrew, and 20,000 people lined up outside the gate. The guards of Sword Chuan City returned to the stronghold and looked at the soldiers outside the gate with a complicated expression. They really hoped that they would never have the chance to fight against the team led by Pang Xiao in their lifetime. Otherwise, they would be the unlucky ones. Outside the city gate, Pang Xiao asked his men, "Did you see a white-clothed young master come out?" So many of them had already left the city. There was no reason that Mu Jinghu could not come out. Mu Jinghu's lightness kung fu was excellent, and it was effortless for him to bring someone out. Replying to Wang Yi, there was indeed a white-clothed young master who came out of the city, saying that he was following your orders to bring someone out. He asked for a horse from me and left. Oh, right, this is the note he left. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining looked at each other, and the two of them did not speak for a long time. Mu Jinghu actually took Qiu Feishan and ran away first. Pang Xiao opened the note. It was a very brief explanation of the reason for his departure. Insufficient protection, too ashamed to face. Pang Xiao was so angry that he laughed. Even if it was because he promised Pang Xiao that he would protect Qin Yining. But in the middle, Qin Yining was molested and put under house arrest. Now that he saw Pang Xiao, he felt embarrassed and wanted to leave. But there was no need to take Qiu Feishan with him. Qin Yining asked him to help save her, but he took her away himself. Could it be that young Master Mu has taken a liking to Lady Qiu? Qin Yining said hesitantly. Pang Xiao was stunned and suddenly said, "That's really possible." I remember Mu Tu said that his martial uncle had told him about his marriage, and when the time was right, he would naturally be sent out to look for it. This time, Mu Tu came to the old capital because his martial uncle said that the south was interesting and sent him out for a stroll. Maybe it really is for Lady Qiu. Qin Yining nodded in realization. Although Tian Jizi had swindled a lot, he was still a swindler. His position was also different from theirs, but he was still famous. What Z-Wei Emperor Star? What 3 inauspicious stars? No one could be sure if these legends were true or false. But this time, Mu Jinghu took Xiao Feishan away. If their fate was really predicted by Tianjizi, and they could also be together, didn't that mean that Tianjizi's predictions were correct? This thought flashed through Qin Yining's mind for a moment, but he threw it to the back of his mind. Regardless of whether the prediction was accurate or not, now that Pang Zhao's situation was confirmed, they needed to work hard to manage it. Qin Yining felt that they didn't need to care about those predictions, lest they be bound by those thoughts and led by the nose by Tianjizi. The team reorganized outside the city. To avoid causing panic in Jianchuan City, Pang Zhao ordered them to set off and planned to walk for a while first. After walking for 4 hours in the direction of the old capital, Pang Zhao ordered them to set up camp and rest. Qin Yining then had the opportunity to talk to Jinghu Wei and Young Man, who stayed outside the city. So, it was you who sent the letter to Wang Yi? Yes, Princess, please don't blame us. It was really because the situation was urgent at that time. After you entered the city, there was no news, and we were really afraid that something would happen. Young Man felt a little guilty. In order to protect Princess, of course, she had to tell Pang Zhao about Jianchuan's situation. But seeing that Pang Zhao really brought the troops and horses, Young Man was a little worried that Pang Zhao would be caught red-handed. If he was really asked to write a book, wouldn't it be his fault? Qin Yining seemed to see through Young Man's worries, and said with a smile, I don't mean to blame you. Who wouldn't be anxious in that situation? If it were me, I would be anxious too. You can rest assured, Wang Yi brought the troops out to train, and it's not considered privately moving the troops, so it's fine. Being comforted like this, Young Man was moved and nodded. Yes, thank you, Princess, for not blaming us. Don't be so polite. Qin Yining smiled and waved his hand. While they were talking, Pang Zhao had already set up the main tent. Naturally, he waved at Qin Yining. Qin Yining smiled and walked over, holding hands with Pang Zhao, and entered the tent. The Jinghu Wei men around them all smiled ambiguously, showing an expression that all men understood. They were really thinking too much. What could this tent cover? Qin Yining and Pang Zhao lay in each other's arms in the tent, enjoying each other's body temperature and heartbeat. The two of them didn't speak until Qin Yining was a little sleepy, and he forced himself to lift his eyelids and asked, Is there a letter from grandmother or my mother? How are Brother Han and Brother Zhao? There's a letter. Everything is fine. That's good. How about home? Home is fine. Father-in-law also ordered someone to secretly send a message. The war over at Alan's side has entered the most tense moment. When Qin Yining heard this, he immediately became much more energized. On the way to Jianchuan, she already didn't know about the war over at Taiten's side. Furthermore, she was still trapped in Jianchuan City, so she didn't know anything about the outside world. Do you think Prince Consort Ji can win? Pang Zhao smiled and touched her cheek. That's hard to say. Si Qin is cunning and sinister, and his methods are always unpresentable. Alan is resourceful, but I'm afraid he will suffer some losses. However, I think that with the Dragon Stallion Army's ability, Alan's chances of success are not small. That's good. I think Prince Consort Ji should be able to win. Why? Why do you suddenly have confidence in him? Pang Zhao's tone was sour. Qin Yining was amused by his expression. Idiot. Of course it's because you and Prince Consort Ji are equally famous. You're so powerful, and you even led your troops into Jianchuan Pass, which is easy to defend and hard to attack. Although I haven't seen Prince Consort Ji fight, I've seen how powerful you are. The two of you are equally famous, so he should be about the same as you. Although Qin Yining was speaking the truth was too pleasant to hear. Pang Zhao's heart was bursting with joy as he said, Little mouth, did you eat honey? Why is it so sweet? Do I look like someone with a glib tongue? Qin Yining laughed softly. She was lying in his arms, her hair messy, and her eyes watery. Pang Zhao's heart raced as he looked at her. He only felt that his sister, Yi, was too beautiful and too likable. Such a beauty, even if she didn't say anything and just sat there quietly, she was still a painting. Pang Xiao lifted Qin Yining's chin with his index finger and kissed him without hesitation. They had been separated for so long, and their yearning for each other had long been deeply ingrained in their bones. Qin Yining also followed Pang Xiao's actions, and his arms circled around his neck as he responded passionately. It wasn't until the two of them were breathing heavily that they had to forcefully separate. "Don't move. Let me hug you for a while." Pang Xiao buried his face in Qin Yining's ear, and his voice revealed a hint of grievance. "Sister E, I missed you." Chapter 752. Pang Xiao nodded gloomily. "Something always happens when you're not by my side. I'm scared of you now. As long as I don't see you, I feel my eyelids twitching and my heart is restless. I can't calm down no matter what I do." Qin Yining smiled and said, "You're really scared." "Yes. People say that I'm a murderous person who kills without batting an eyelid. A person like me shouldn't be afraid of anything, but I know in my heart that only when it comes to you, I'm really scared. I think I'm that kind of a rational person." Pang Xiao was strong and domineering, such a person who would rather break than bend. But in front of her, he confessed the deepest fear in his heart. She was very distressed, but more than that, she was satisfied and cherished. To be able to have such a sincere husband, they didn't get married in a blind way, but they liked each other. To be able to be together, this was already a great blessing. In this regard, she was much happier than Qiu Feishan. Thinking of Qiu Feishan, she couldn't help but think of the Qiu family. "We've fallen out with the Qiu family. They are a big family and must have a lot of connections in the imperial court. I'm worried that when we go back, the Qiu family will counterattack." Pang Xiao nodded and said, "I think so too. Since the Qiu family doesn't intend to support me and has chosen to support others, no matter who it is, they will be my enemy. So I'm thinking that we should hurry back to the old capital as soon as possible and make preparations in advance, so as not to be caught off guard by the Qiu family." Qin Yining sighed helplessly. "This time, we've really been fooled by Qiu Feishan. Before coming to Jinchuan, no one would have thought that there was such a big family behind the four-way shop, and this big family hides the secrets of prominent families and hidden families. So, the Liu family's relationship with them is unusual. Since the Qiu family decided to change from hidden to prominent because of the Liu family, Liu Heng's choice to support your majesty is certain." Both of them were silent, especially Qin Yining. Although she had some disagreements with the Liu Heng family and had schemed against each other, after being kidnapped by the Titan, she had indeed gone through thick and thin with Liu Heng. This kind of friendship between life and death was not fake. Qin Yining also knew that Liu Heng had feelings for her. Therefore, he had intentionally distanced himself from her. But he didn't expect Liu Heng to make such a decision in the end. Outsiders like them didn't know the secrets of the prominent and hidden clans, but Liu Heng should know. In a situation where he clearly knew of this rule, Liu Heng still clearly took sides in the court. That was truly unwise, because as long as one took a side, it was equivalent to being blocked. In the future, there would be wins and losses. It would never be like when one was neutral, where one could change one's rudder according to the wind and preserve one's strength. Liu Heng was a good person, but he was not a qualified family head. Now that she thought about it, this was probably the reason why Grand Secretary Liu felt so regretful before his death. Many thoughts flashed through Qin Yining's mind. Leaning against Pang Xiao's warm embrace, she breathed in the familiar and reassuring scent. After going through a crisis, her exhausted body finally relaxed, and she gradually fell into a deep sleep. Hearing her gradually stabilizing breathing, Pang Xiao couldn't help but look down at the person in his arms. She must have been scared out of her wits. Even though she was asleep, her delicate brows were still furrowed, and her fan-like long eyelashes fluttered uneasily. Her sleep was extremely restless. Pang Xiao kissed her forehead with heartache. He hugged her tighter and wrapped her in his arms. She seemed to feel safe. Her furrowed brows gradually loosened, and her whole body relaxed. So good. She was in his arms again. Ever since he received the news that Qin Yining was trapped, he hadn't slept well. Pang Xiao's exhaustion had reached its limit. Unknowingly, he also fell into a deep sleep. The journey to the old capital was extremely smooth. Under the protection of tens of thousands of elite soldiers, how could there be any danger? Perhaps it was because they heard that the army specialized in suppressing the bandits. Many of the bandits along the way became nervous. Wherever Pang Xiao went, he would naturally send people to inquire about the bandits. If there were any bandits on the mountain, he would lead the army to suppress them. The income from suppressing the bandits could be used to support the army's consumption. In this way, the lie of going out to train the soldiers was true, and there was no need to worry about the military's expenditure. Qin Yining's journey was very smooth, and she was well protected. The only thing that worried her was Qiu Feishan and Mu Jinghu. She didn't know why Mu Jinghu took Qiu Feishan away. This person didn't even send a message after leaving and only left a note. Because of the delay on the road, it was already autumn when they returned to the old capital. Pang Xiao led the army to the camp, and Qin Yining didn't follow. Naturally, she led the people back to Qin's mansion first to have a good rest and reorganize. When Pang Xiao returned to the camp, he boldly and decisively marginalized all the people he knew that Qiu Feishan had planted in the army. Qiu Feishan was taken away, and the Qiu family made it clear that they were enemies with him. Naturally, the army couldn't continue to put Qiu Feishan's people in an important position, including Lu Zhang, who was the first to borrow money from Sitong. They were all sent to a camp to be monitored. For this kind of change, the low-level soldiers who didn't like to use their brains naturally didn't care. But this change couldn't escape the eyes of Magistrate Yang. Qiu Feishan left with her people. Magistrate Yang didn't hear any news of Qiu Feishan for a long time. In fact, he was secretly worried about her. Later, he heard that Pang Xiao took 20,000 people out to train the soldiers. Magistrate Yang naturally had a lot of guesses and doubts. Now that Pang Xiao's soldiers and horses came back, and the princess who went out also came back, but only Qiu Feishan was missing, Magistrate Yang was a little panicked. Could it be that something had happened? But Magistrate Yang had to stay where he was and couldn't go out. He could only contact Mr. Liu several times. Mr. Liu was sent by Qiu Feishan to take charge. Naturally, he was anxious about the situation of his boss. Hearing Magistrate Yang's inquiry, he was more anxious to investigate. Just when Magistrate Yang and Mr. Liu's attention fell on the whereabouts of Qiu Feishan, Pang Xiao had neatly removed those malignant tumors in the army. On the eve of the Mid-Autumn Festival, Magistrate Yang received an invitation from Pang Xiao. He held a banquet at home and invited Magistrate Yang and his family back. He wanted to take the opportunity of the Mid-Autumn Festival to have a small gathering. Magistrate Yang looked at the invitation for a long time. The wife of the magistrate, Yuan, walked around Magistrate Yang several times, but she didn't see Magistrate Yang come to his senses. She couldn't help sneering. "What's wrong? Master lost a good niece as if he lost his soul. If you don't feel at ease, just send people out to look for her." Magistrate Yang came to his senses and frowned. "What nonsense are you talking about? Whether I'm talking nonsense or not, don't you know in your heart? Why don't I know that you have a niece like Miss Chiu in your family? Which of your relatives can raise such a beautiful daughter?" Chapter 753. Magistrate Yang didn't expect that Mrs. Yuan would say that. He was upset and worried about serious things. Now he was reprimanded and slandered about his relationship with Qiu Feishan. More importantly, Qiu Feishan's identity couldn't be publicized, which meant that Magistrate Yang couldn't explain clearly. Magistrate Yang was so angry that his face turned blue. He scolded, "Don't be unreasonable. I have nothing to do with her at all. She's about the same age as our daughter. Who do you think I am? Did I stab you in the heart? Even if you yell at me with a pale face, you can't hide the filthy things you've done. I think you're simply an ungrateful person. You've even forgotten the feelings we had back then." Magistrate Yang was annoyed by her crying, but he couldn't explain her accusations. He couldn't let her know everything that happened outside, in case she didn't have a lock on her mouth and talked about everything when she went out. Magistrate Yang couldn't stay in the room any longer. He took the invitation and walked away. Mrs. Yuan thought of Magistrate Yang's indifferent attitude towards her. He was no longer as gentle as he was when he was young. She immediately cried, even more sadly. Magistrate Yang stood in the corridor and flipped the invitation in his hand over and over again. Hearing the cries of Madame Yuan, who was just a door away, he became more and more impatient. He said in a low voice through the door, "Tomorrow, Prince Zhongshan will be hosting a banquet in his manor. He has invited you and me to go." As soon as he finished speaking, the door was hit by something. With a bang, there was a sharp sound of broken porcelain falling to the ground. "I won't go. You have someone to accompany you. Why drag me, a chaff, to make you lose face? Go find your good niece. You ignorant and stupid woman, making trouble without reason." Magistrate Yang was so angry that he left. Mrs. Yuan didn't hear the sound outside for a long time. When she opened the door, there was no one outside. Even the servants were nowhere to be seen. She was so angry that she cried even more fiercely. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao were naturally not interested in the quarrel between the couple in Magistrate Yang's mansion. At this time, the two of them were discussing the process of the banquet tomorrow. There was no one around him. Even Bing Tang and the other Qin Yining players went to do their own things. He discussed the plan with Pang Xiao in a low voice and whispered his suggestions to Pang Xiao. Pang Xiao's phoenix-like eyes lit up as she listened. She couldn't help but scratch Qin Yining's nose. "You're so clever. Why do you always come up with so many clever ideas whenever I ask you to research something? I'm influenced by the company I keep. I've been with you all day, so naturally, I've come up with all sorts of ideas." Pang Xiao chuckled at her words. "Although you're praising me, why do I feel that it's weird?" Qin Yining pursed his lips and laughed silently. "All right, you dare to tease me. Let's see how I'll deal with you." Pang Xiao put her finger to her mouth and blew on it. She pounced on Qin Yining and scratched him. Qin Yining was extremely ticklish. He laughed so hard that he couldn't breathe. He dodged and begged Pang Xiao for mercy. After a long time, he finally made Pang Xiao stop. Pang Xiao admired Qin Yining's blushing face and sparkling eyes. He felt that the girl in his arms was warm and fragrant. Even her breath was sweet. He couldn't help but pull her onto his lap and kiss her. In the end, Qin Yining was so angry that he pounded his chest while panting. Pang Xiao only stopped temporarily. "Don't be serious. I'm talking about serious matters. If you continue to touch me, I won't talk to you anymore." All right. I won't tease you anymore. Hurry up and tell me." Pang Xiao smiled and moved her ear closer to him. Qin Yining explained his idea in detail. After discussing it with Pang Xiao, they decided on a plan. The next day, Magistrate Yang came with his wife, Yuan. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining were both in casual clothes. They smiled and greeted them at the gate of the mansion. When Magistrate Yang saw that Pang Xiao and Qin Yining went straight to the gate of the mansion, he relaxed a lot. He knew the relationship between Qiu Feishan and the army. He also knew about Pang Xiao. Now he still had to rely on Qiu Feishan to support the army. He secretly regarded Pang Xiao's courtesy as his flattery and intimacy to Qiu Feishan. Magistrate Yang didn't put on airs. He smiled and cupped his hands, saying, "Sorry to disturb you." "You're welcome. Your presence brings light to my humble house. Please come in. Please." Pang Xiao and Magistrate Yang walked half a body's length away from each other. Qin Yining smiled and greeted Yuan. He said with a smile, "Why didn't you bring your daughter to walk around with you?" Yuan's eyes were still a little swollen. Before she came, she also held her breath. However, she didn't want to embarrass herself in front of outsiders. This matter was also her family's business. Yuan squeezed out a smile and said, "She caught a cold these 2 days. It's not convenient for her to go out. She's also afraid that it'll be bad if she gets sick." "Really? It's cold these days and nights. She should pay more attention to her health," Qin Yining said with a smile. The two chatted casually and followed Pang Xiao and Magistrate Yang into the garden. Qin's mansion had been renovated. A lot of flowers and plants were transplanted in the garden. At this time, the flowers and trees were gorgeous. The clear lake reflected the weeping willows by the lake. It was a secluded scenery. Yuan couldn't help but praise, "The mansion is really beautiful." Being able to live here and just looking at the scenery makes people feel relaxed and happy. If foreign doesn't mind, you can often come to the mansion as a guest. It just so happens that I don't have anyone to talk to here. Qin Yining invited with a smile. Yuan thought for a moment. Although she was only the wife of the magistrate, there was no other woman in the area who had a higher status than her. She was worthy of being the wife of the Prince Zhongxun. Naturally, she nodded with a smile and said, "Many thanks for Wang Fei's kindness. Then I will often come to disturb you in the future. I hope Wang Fei won't mind." "How could I? I'm more than happy." They walked all the way to the banquet hall. The round table was already prepared with food and wine. Because there were only two couples and no one else, there was no need to adhere to the rules. After sitting down according to their status, the two sides began to toast. Magistrate Yang saw that Qiu Feishan took the initiative to get close to Pang Xiao. He also wanted to be on good terms with Pang Xiao. His words were like a spring breeze. Pang Xiao was naturally happy to cater. He had never been so harmonious with Magistrate Yang before. Qin Yining and Yuan spoke in a low voice. Both sides were very polite and appeared to be very close. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 dishes, the family banquet was coming to an end. Magistrate Yang stood up and said with a smile, "Many thanks for Wang Yi and Wang Fei's hospitality. It's late now, so we'll take our leave." Yuan also stood up and prepared to leave. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining both stood up. Pang Xiao stepped forward and faintly blocked Qin Yining. He said with a smile, "I didn't have a chance to talk with Magistrate Yang before. Today, I really regret that I didn't meet you sooner. Magistrate Yang and Madam, why don't you stay in my humble home? You and I can often talk. Isn't that good?" Magistrate Yang was slightly tipsy and didn't notice anything wrong. He declined with a smile, "No. Many thanks for Wang Ye's hospitality. There will be more opportunities to talk in the future. It's better to stay. There will be no one at home at this time." Pang Xiao smiled. Magistrate Yang was stunned. He blinked his drunken eyes and didn't understand what was going on. Chapter 754. Assassination. Pang Xiao waved towards the door. Ji Yun and Xian Yun immediately supported a young girl to walk in. Upon closer inspection, it was Magistrate Yang's daughter. "Father, mother." Miss Yang entered the door and bowed with a smile. She held Madame Yuan's arm and said, "Mother, why did you ask me to come here?" Madame Yuan's body trembled violently. She widened her eyes in horror and shook her head. "Why? What does Wang you want to do?" Magistrate Yang immediately sobered up. "What do you mean, Your Highness?" Pang Xiao smiled. This king and Magistrate Yang had a good chat. Therefore, he invited Magistrate Yang's family to stay at my house for a while. We can often have a long talk. Isn't that good? Magistrate Yang was shocked and angry. Even if he was drunk, he could understand Pang Xiao's meaning. Was he going to imprison his family? "I appreciate Wang Ye's kindness. If you want to meet, it is very easy. There will be many opportunities in the future. Wang Yi, please stay. I will take my leave." Magistrate Yang grabbed Madame Yuan with one hand and his daughter with the other and turned to leave. However, the outside of the reception hall was surrounded by Jinghu Wei. It was so crowded that not even a drop of water could pass through. Magistrate Yang's coachmen and bodyguards had already been warmly taken away by Pang Xiao's servants to eat and rest. Now, there were no bodyguard around them. Magistrate Yang suddenly turned back. He had completely sobered up in horror. "Did Your Highness plan this from the beginning? What do you want to do? Do you want to rebel?" As soon as he said this, Madame Yuan held her daughter tightly in her arms. Her eyes widened in horror, and she was so frightened that she hid behind Magistrate Yang. Pang Xiao was still smiling. "Magistrate Yang, don't randomly accuse this king. This king can't afford it. He just asked Magistrate Yang's family to stay at his house for a few days. How can you say that he is rebelling?" With a wave of his hand, Huzi immediately understood Pang Xiao's intention and led his men to surround Magistrate Yang. "Magistrate, please. A guest room has been prepared for you. You can rest and sober up after drinking too much." Huzi smiled. Magistrate Yang was furious. "How dare you, Meng Zhishi? You must have eaten a leopard's guts. In any case, I am an official of the imperial court. a magistrate personally appointed by your majesty. How dare you kidnap me? Pang Xiao was too lazy to argue with Magistrate Yang anymore. Magistrate Yang would have to stay for a while no matter how much he said or how little he said. Therefore, he didn't say much and just let them take him away. Magistrate Yang was shocked and angry. He screamed, "I must report you. Let your majesty punish him severely. You are such a traitor." Pang Xiao took Qin Yining's hand and followed the troops out of the flower hall. He smiled and said, "Before that, this king will also tell your majesty that Magistrate Yang colluded with merchants and influenced the imperial court's decisions and personnel. This is a complicated relationship, and I believe your majesty will be very interested." Magistrate Yang couldn't say anything at all. It was as if a raw egg was stuffed in his mouth. He could only open his mouth wide and gasp for breath. Under his panic, Madame Yuan and Miss Yang had already been scared to tears. Naturally, they didn't know what Magistrate Yang had done outside, so they more or less complained in their hearts. Magistrate Yang, on the other hand, was completely stunned. He had indeed colluded with businessmen to influence the imperial court. After contacting Qiu Feishan, gaining her trust, and listening to Qiu Feishan's orders for several times, Magistrate Yang thought that what he had done must not be discovered by others. He must be very careful. But now his mistake was in Pang Xiao's hands. Magistrate Yang came to his senses. He was too confident before, and it was also because things had been going smoothly for too long. He forgot that the person in front of him was not a soft persimmon that could be bullied, but a fierce beast that couldn't be provoked. Now that Qiu Feishan was nowhere to be found, and there was no one around to guard him, Pang Xiao naturally wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to take revenge. Magistrate Yang thought a lot, but in fact, it was just a breath. At this time, his family was about to be surrounded by a group of strong men with weapons in their hands. Magistrate Yang hurriedly turned back. "If Wang Yi cares about the previous food and salary, we can discuss it. You don't have to do this." Pang Xiao narrowed his eyes and smiled very gently, but he didn't care about Magistrate Yang's begging at all, as if he didn't hear it at all. Magistrate Yang saw that his begging didn't work, so he scolded again, "Pang Zhishi, you traitor, you want to betray the country. I must impeach you." Pang Xiao didn't care about it at all. When the people went away and the other side's scolding couldn't be heard, Qin Yining asked Pang Xiao, "Is my idea not good? In fact, I'm also afraid that your majesty will take advantage of this matter to do something. Don't think so much. This is also a critical moment in time. We have a grudge with the Qiu family, and in the future, we won't be able to get any funding from the Four Links. Raising such a big army, the people eat and the horses eat, and also the food and salary. If we don't have money, won't we go back to the way it was before?" "Yes," Qin Yining said helplessly. "After weighing the pros and cons, we still use Magistrate Yang Seal to take the silver rice from the storehouse to appease the army for the time being. We don't know when the Qiu family will target us. If we don't manage the army well, won't we be attacked from both inside and outside?" "That's right. And Magistrate Yang is indeed not a good person. I have a lot of evidence in my hands about what he did outside. If he impeaches me, the evidence will be useful. It's fine." Pang Xiao put her arm around Qin Yining's shoulder and walked all the way to Snow Pear Courtyard. She said in a low voice, "I have arranged for people to guard the courtyard where Magistrate Yang's family lives. You must pay attention to their food and drink, and the people who serve them must be polite. Don't neglect them. You must treat them as if they are guests." "I know. Don't worry, I will be careful." Qin Yining smiled and looked up at Pang Xiao. From Pang Xiao's angle, he could see her small fan-like long eyelashes fluttering, leaving a faint shadow under her eyes. Her watery eyes curved slightly when she smiled, and her eyes were as bright as two lakes. "Good girl." Pang Xiao couldn't help rubbing her forehead with her chin. Pang Xiao sent Qin Yining back to rest. Not long after, Huzi came. "Wang Yi, everything is going according to plan. Our people have already obtained the magistrate's seal." Pang Xiao stood up and said, "Let's go. The next step is to take control of the treasury." Yes. Huzi immediately responded. Qin Yining looked worriedly at Pang Zhao's tall figure. Pang Zhao seemed to sense something. He turned around and smiled at Qin Yining. You should sleep early. I will send you a message after I have taken care of everything. After that, he had to return to the military camp. Qin Yining nodded and said, I know. Be careful. Qin Yining, Bing Tang, and Ji Yun watched Pang Zhao leave before returning to their rooms. Ji Yun and Bing Tang looked at each other. They both noticed that Qin Yining seemed to be in low spirits. Bing Tang comforted her softly. Princess, don't worry. Wang Yi has so many people around him. Moreover, this matter is not very difficult. This is much more convenient than going to Jianchuan City to rescue you. Facing a place like Jianchuan, Wang Yi still did not lose a single hair. Qin Yining pulled the two maidservants' hands and sat down at the square table. He said, I'm just worried about how this matter will develop in the future. We have already offended the Qiu family. To avoid being retaliated against in the future, Wang Yi and I had no choice but to come back and make the first move. However, Wang Yi is now at the heart of the struggle. If we make a mistake, Your Majesty will have something on us. I am worried that there will be a problem. It is as if there is a needle hanging in my heart. It pricks me from time to time. However, at this point, there was no other way. Ji Yun and Bing Tang could not think of any other way to comfort Qin Yining. They could only change the topic and talk about something else. In the afternoon, Pang Zhao returned. Don't worry, everything is going smoothly. We have already taken control of the treasury. Once I finish dealing with the military matters, I will release Magistrate Yang. Qin Yining smiled and said, We finally managed to gain some time. On our way back, we were delayed for some time. No matter how slow the Qiu family's actions are, they should have made their next move. I thought that it would only be in the last few days, and they will only target the military matters. You're right. Pang Zhao smiled and put his arm around Qin Yining's shoulder. We have already made sufficient preparations. We are not afraid of what the Qiu family will do. Don't worry. Although your idea is good, I will only do it if I think it is feasible. My judgment will not be wrong. Don't worry. Did he see through her nervousness and dejection? Qin Yining leaned on Pang Zhao's shoulder and gently nodded. I understand. Don't worry. In the end, Pang Zhao still had to oversee the military. Daily drill was indispensable. Therefore, he only had a meal with Qin Yining and hurried back. Brother Han and brother Zhao were not at home. Qin Yining did not have a child to take care of. There was nothing for her to do, so she suddenly became idle. Qin Yining simply sewed with Bing Tang, Ji Yun, and Xian Yun. She was preparing to personally sew a cloak for Pang Zhao. Although it seemed that the days were very peaceful, in fact, Qin Yining had been anxiously waiting for the Qiu family to make their move. 7 days later, Pang Zhao returned home. Sister Yi, my people just brought news from Jianchuan City, Pang Zhao said with a serious expression. Something happened to the Qiu family. I'm afraid they can't take care of us. Qin Yining turned pale with fright. The Qiu family is such a big family. It has been peaceful for more than 100 years. What could happen? Pang Zhao said, Qiu Guang was murdered. Qin Yining was stunned when she heard that. And the murderer is Qiu Yuanqing. How do you know who the murderer is? Did your people find out? That's not the case. Qiu Yuanqing tried to assassinate Qiu Guang, but did not clean up the mess. Now, the Qiu family and all the people of Jianchuan know that Qiu Yuanqing killed his father to become the head of the family. I'm afraid he will never be able to wash away his infamy. Chapter 755. That's why I said he's stupid. Pang Zhao hugged Qin Yining and placed her on his lap. He rocked her gently, as if he was coaxing a child. To think that such a disloyal, unfilial, heartless, and unrighteous fool could become a candidate for the successor of the clan head. Qiu Guang must have been blind to have chosen him. Or maybe there's no one better than Qiu Yuanqing in the family. Qin Yining looked back at Pang Zhao with a smile and analyzed. In my opinion, the only people who can be considered important in the family are old Master Qiu and Qiu Feishan. Most of the others have been spoiled and are not material to carry the family. It's a pity that the family doesn't like Qiu Feishan because she's a woman. This is the narrow-mindedness of their family. It's also why Qiu Guang can't compare to father-in-law. I've never seen father-in-law look down on you because you're a woman. When it's important, he's also willing to listen to your opinion. That's right. Qin Yining lowered her eyes and smiled. Thinking of her father, she felt a little disappointed. She was actually a little homesick. She missed her father in the capital. She also missed her mother, her 2 grandmothers, and her 2 precious children. It was a pity that the current situation did not allow their family to be reunited and live together peacefully. Pang Xiao had Qin Yining in his heart, so naturally, he was paying attention to her every move at all times. When her mood was a little down, he immediately sensed it. He carefully tightened his arms around her and planted a light kiss on her temple. "Are you homesick?" His voice was low and deep. When he softened his voice, it was even more magnetic. Qin Yining's heart thumped when she heard it. She shook her head and said, "It's okay. I know they're doing well. And I'm married. My home is here." Pang Xiao laughed and said, "Is this girl muddle-headed? Why is your home here? Are you talking about the old residence of the Qin family?" "Of course not." Qin Yining shook her head and smiled. "Because you're here." Pang Xiao's heart thumped. That numbing sense of happiness was like being patted on the back of his hand by a furry kitten with its fleshy paw. "My good sister, why are you so good? I really like you more and more, more and more." Pang Xiao buried his face in Qin Yining's shoulder and gently rocked her. Her arms were held by Pang Xiao, so she couldn't hug him back. She could only turn her face to the side and gently kissed his hair. Pang Xiao seemed to have sensed something. He pinched her chin and bit her lips eagerly. He sucked on her lips forcefully and wrapped his arms around her tightly. His large hands wandered around her back and touched her shoulder blades. He loosened his grip and pecked her affectionately. He said in a muffled voice, "Sister E, you've lost so much weight. Must be your husband's not too. Tell me, how should I punish you?" Qin Yining's breathing was a little rapid. His big hands had reached into her clothes. She pushed him away shyly. "Don't make trouble. It's broad daylight." Pang Xiao laughed softly in her ear in a low and hoarse voice. "I don't want to. I want to make trouble. I want to make trouble for our sister E." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly stood up and strode into the room with her in his arms. Qin Yining was so tired that he didn't have any strength left. He fell asleep with his head on Pang Xiao's arm. Before he fell asleep, he was still thinking that he hadn't finished talking about the current situation of the Qiu family. The next time he talked about serious matters with Pang Xiao, he must stay away from him. In the evening, Qin Yining was dug out of the bed by Pang Xiao. He put on a snow-white undergarment and a honey-colored robe in a daze. Pang Xiao's gaze deepened as he looked at her messy long hair hanging over her shoulders and back. Her small, fair face was as big as a palm, and her red lips were slightly swollen. There were even a few light-colored marks on her collarbone. Pang Xiao's eyes darkened as he hurriedly buttoned up her dress. "Get up and eat something. You can't sleep anymore. Otherwise, you won't be able to sleep in the middle of the night." Qin Yining's waist and back were aching. He didn't have any strength. He simply hugged Pang Xiao's waist and buried his face in his stomach. "I'm not hungry at all. I still want to sleep." Her hot breath fell on his abdomen through the undergarment. Pang Xiao hurriedly pushed the little girl away. He stretched out his hand to get a handkerchief from the wash basin shelf to wipe her face. After the warm handkerchief wiped her face, the water vapor cooled down. Qin Yining finally woke up. "You're awake?" Pang Xiao couldn't help laughing. Qin Yining also couldn't help smiling back. Her watery eyes were curved. "I'm awake." Pang Xiao took a pair of embroidered shoes with soft soles and helped her put them on. He also took a white jade hairpin and clumsily helped her tie up her long hair. Qin Yining smiled and let him do whatever he wanted. She didn't even cry out in pain when her hair was pulled. Pang Xiao touched Qin Yining's little dimple with his index finger. He took her hand and said, "Let's go. It's time to eat." Qin Yining learned a lot of rules. One of them was not to talk while eating. Pang Xiao was used to being a rough man in the army. Besides, there were only the 2 of them here, so they didn't pay attention to those troublesome rules. They continued to talk to Qin Yining about the Qiu family situation while eating. It turned out that after Qiu Yuanqing succeeded in assassinating Qiu Guang, the matter was exposed, causing the Qiu family to split into two factions. One faction supported Qiu Yuanqing, while the other faction supported Qiu Feishan. They wanted to find Qiu Feishan and avenge Qiu Guang. It's a pity that Qiu Feishan was taken away by Mu Jinghu. We don't even know where she is. They didn't want to support Qiu Feishan since a long time ago. Now that something has happened, they're placing their hopes on her. They don't even mind that she's a woman. It's really ridiculous. But at least something like this happened to the Qiu family. The pressure on us is suddenly reduced. The Qiu family can't even take care of themselves now. If we don't work together, there's nothing to be afraid of. But we can't let our guard down. It's still better to be on guard. I know. Good girl, eat a piece of meat. Pang Xiao saw that Qin Yining only ate vegetables, so he picked a piece of mutton and put it in her bowl. Qin Yining pursed her lips and smiled. After eating the mutton, she said, "I'm afraid I'll get fat if I eat too much meat for dinner." Pang Xiao's hand paused, and he stared at her with his phoenix eyes. "Don't tell me you don't eat well at dinner? Do you know that you're so thin now that I feel uncomfortable holding you?" Qin Yining subconsciously looked down at her chest. Then she realized what she was thinking, and her face turned red. Pang Xiao also saw her appearance, and a certain part of his body started to heat up again. He put down the bowl and slowly picked up the teacup to take a sip of tea. In his heart, he was thinking that perhaps his wife was right. He should eat less meat at night to avoid getting heaty. Pang Xiao accompanied Qin Yining at home for 2 days, then rushed back to the military camp. Qin Yining started to do needlework again. She was going to make a few clothes for her parents, Pang Xiao, and the 2 children. Because the Qiu family was in chaos, Qin Yining knew that they had no time to deal with Pang Xiao, so he was temporarily relieved. Magistrate Yang's family's short stay in the Qin manor could also end. Qin Yining personally went to let the family of 3 leave. They had been away from the courtyard for several days. When Magistrate Yang saw Qin Yining, he gave a heavy snort and fiercely waved his arms behind his back. His sleeves made a loud noise. Yuan Shi and Miss Yang were slightly nervous. They held Magistrate Yang's arms on both sides. They were afraid that he was stubborn and would cause trouble again. What if the Wang Fei was so angry that she didn't let them go? Fortunately, Qin Yining didn't want to keep them and make him angry. "I haven't been a good host these days. Magistrate Yang, Madam, and your daughter are welcome to come to the manor as guests at any time. This king's wife will definitely welcome you." Magistrate Yang was so angry that his eyes turned red. This woman's skin was simply thick to the extreme. She locked them up and still had the nerve to say that they were guests in front of them. It was true that people who didn't belong to the same family would not enter the same family. Pang Zhishi's wife was also not a good person. Magistrate Yang still had some sense. He left silently with a sullen face. It seemed that he was in a hurry to go back and impeach Pang Xiao. She didn't know how he would feel when he went back and found that the government office, the treasury, the taxes, the grain, and the magistrate seal were all controlled by Pang Xiao. A few days later, on the 10th of September, Pang Xiao returned to the manor again. Qin Yining smiled and said, "Why are you back today? Why didn't you send someone to tell me in advance? I could have prepared some delicious food for you." Although they could eat their fill in the barracks, they couldn't eat well. Every time she thought of Pang Xiao and the men in the army eating cornbread, black and hard steamed buns and salted vegetables, she felt distressed. Pang Xiao smiled and shook his head, saying, "There is something. Father-in-law sent someone to deliver the news as quickly as possible." Qin Yining's heart skipped a beat. She asked anxiously, "What news? Did something happen at home?" No, don't panic." Seeing her pale face, Pang Xiao hurriedly hugged her and sat her down. He explained, "It's not what you think. Nothing happened at home. Everyone is fine. Father-in-law sent someone to tell me the situation in the imperial court." "I see." Qin Yining let out a long sigh. After Si Qin led the Taitan army to retreat, he was ambushed by Si Qin. He was almost captured alive. The situation in the Taitan is also very tense. The common people are complaining because of the war. The time to avenge Inari Khan has passed. The common people can only experience the pain of war. Therefore, their support for Qin is not as strong as before. Qin Yining's eyes lit up when she heard this. She said happily, "That's great. I said that Prince Consort Ji is as famous as you and must be as powerful as you. I was right." Pang Xiao was amused by her words. He said in a light tone, "Alan is indeed very powerful. If the two of us were to fight, I don't know if I would be able to defeat him. However, Alan did very well this time. Under such difficult circumstances, he was still able to drive the Titan out of Dezhou. Qin could only take the initiative to ask for peace. He even took the initiative to give Inari Khan's younger sister, Princess Tana, to your majesty as a concubine, to show that the two countries are on good terms." Chapter 756. In fact, Pang Xiao did not take Tian Jizi's evaluation to heart at all. However, he also knew that many people, including Li Qiqian, took Tian Jizi's evaluation to heart. Seeing Qin Yining frowning and looking at him with disdain, he could not help but laugh out loud. "All right, Sister E, don't be angry. It's not worth getting angry at someone like that. Father-in-law sent the letter mainly to tell us to be more careful. Although I received the court bulletin very quickly, Your Majesty sent a secret envoy to the old capital, but the court bulletin did not mention it." Qin Yining frowned and said worriedly, "Why would he send a secret envoy out of the blue? What does Your Majesty want to do?" "Father-in-law means that Your Majesty has two big worries. Since the problem in the north has been solved, then the problem in the south is left. The secret envoy must have come to the south to show Your Majesty's kindness and to cause trouble in the south. He wants us to be mentally prepared in advance." Qin Yining nodded seriously and said, "My father will not speak carelessly. Since he guessed it and told us directly, then it should not be far from the truth. Fortunately, you have already made preparations. Now the army is well trained, and the soldiers' salaries are not a problem. The local disloyal soldiers are also under control. Otherwise, we will be completely unprepared. If Your Majesty really wants to do something to you, we will be attacked from the front and the back." Pang Xiao nodded and fell silent with Qin Yining. Thinking back to what they had experienced in the past few days, they felt some lingering fear. Jiziu's victory came suddenly. If they had delayed a little longer and were not prepared at all, they were afraid that they would have fallen into a very difficult situation. They would have many constraints and would not be able to deal with the enemy without any repercussions. Fortunately, everything was developing in a good direction. "Let's celebrate tonight and eat a good meal to celebrate the victory over the Titan. Celebrate the victory over the Titan. The people at the border can finally live in peace." Pang Xiao sighed and hugged Qin Yining in his arms and patted her back. The news sent by Qin Huayuan was not bad. The secret envoy sent by Your Majesty arrived at the old capital very quickly. One day, Qin Yining was sewing Zhao Ge'er's little clothes when a series of urgent shouts came from outside. "My lady, is it Huzi?" Bing Tang stood up and looked at the door curiously. Huzi rushed down the corridor and said anxiously, "Wang Fei, Your Majesty's secret envoy, went to the military camp to deliver an imperial edict. He said that there is another imperial edict for you. He is coming here now. Wang Yi asked me to come back and tell you." Qin Yining put down his embroidery and asked with a frown, "What order did Your Majesty give to Wang Yi?" "In order to celebrate the victory over the Titan, Your Majesty granted amnesty to the people. In consideration of Wang Ye's contributions in guarding the south, he rewarded him with 100 taels of gold. In addition, Your Majesty also made the Marquis of Dinghua, which will be hereditary. He also made Qi Shujia, the commandant of Southern Yin, Imperial Prince Su." Huzi took a deep breath and said slowly, "The higher-ups also gave orders for Magistrate Yang to go back to the capital to report on his work. A new magistrate will be sent here. The most important thing is that Your Majesty asked you to be the wedding ambassador. In a while, the secret envoy will come to deliver the imperial edict." Wang Yi asked around, and the secret envoy was also a tactful person. He knew that you would know the contents of the imperial edict sooner or later, so he immediately told Wang Yi, "Your Majesty wants you to take care of Princess Tana when she comes to Dezhou." Qin Yining pursed his lips, took 2 steps back, and sat down on the soft chair. It was obvious that Li Qiqian really wanted to see the world in chaos. Look at what kind of edict he gave. He gave Ji Ziyu the title of Duke, which will be hereditary, but he only gave Pang Xiao some gold and silver as a symbolic reward. Wasn't this sowing discord between the 2 people who were equally famous? Also, in order to stabilize the situation in the south, Li Qiqian promised to recognize Southern Yin as an independent country and Yuqi Shujia as the emperor of Southern Yin, who knew that he would go back on his words. They had clearly agreed, but now he gave the emperor of a country a title of king. Wasn't this deliberately provoking trouble? As for why Magistrate Yang was suddenly transferred, Qin Yining thought of 2 possibilities. First, Your Majesty knew about Magistrate Yang's experience and wanted to use him to impeach Pang Xiao. The second possibility was more terrifying. The people the Qiu family arranged in the imperial court were so powerful that they could control the imperial court and use local officials. This time, Qiu Guang was killed, and the Qiu family fell into the hands of Qiu Yuanqing. Qiu Yuanqing wanted to eliminate Qiu Feishan's people even more. If the above were difficult to deal with, the most difficult thing was that Li Qiqian wanted her to receive Princess Tana. Princess Tana was Inari Khan's younger sister. Although it was not known whether they were of the same mother or not, and it was suspected that they were cousins, but according to the rumors, Inari Khan had died in her hands, and she had long been blamed for it. How could Tana not hate the enemy who killed Nari? Li Qiqian wanted her, the enemy who killed her sister, to receive Princess Tana. What a coincidence! Qin Yining's mind was turning fast, and he was analyzing quickly. At this time, a maid came back and said, "Wang Fei, Wang Yi is back. There's also a eunuch from the imperial court who wants to deliver the edict." Wang Yi is receiving the eunuch in the front. "Wang Fei, you should prepare to receive the edict." Qin Yining nodded. "I know." Huzi said, "Wang Fei, you should prepare well. This subordinate will leave first." Qin Yining smiled. "Bing Tang, help me send them off." Huzi smiled and winked at Bing Tang. Bing Tang's face turned red. He stomped his feet and snorted. Then he followed Huzi out. Qin Yining was amused by the pair of children. The confusion in his heart disappeared a little. Qin Yining put on makeup and went to the front yard. Pang Xiao had already ordered people to prepare an incense table. Qin Yining knew the content of the imperial edict, so when he was kneeling and listening to the edict, he was a little confused. When a eunuch handed the imperial edict to Qin Yining came back to his senses and received it with both hands. "This subject accepts the imperial edict. Thank you for your Majesty's grace." She lowered her head and knelt on the ground. A pair of white, jade-like hands were raised above her head. The emperor trusted his subjects and entrusted them with important tasks. This was the greatest grace. It was even more so for a woman. Chief Steward Chung took 2 steps forward and placed the imperial edict in Qin Yining's hands. His hoarse and somewhat sharp voice was very gentle as he said, "Wang Fei, please rise. Your Majesty values Wang Yi and Wang Fei. This is truly Dai Fu. This is all thanks to your Majesty's benevolence." Qin Yining held the imperial edict and stood up. Chief Steward Chung smiled and said, "The imperial edict states that Princess Tana's marriage procession will arrive in the capital at the end of the year. Wang Fei, please prepare early. Time is very tight." Qin Yining smiled and nodded. "Yes. Thank you for your advice. Wang Fei is too courteous. This servant doesn't deserve it." Chief Steward Chung bowed to Qin Yining again and turned to walk towards Pang Xiao. "Wang Yi, may I have a word with you?" Pang Xiao naturally smiled and nodded, then followed Chief Steward Chung to the side. Chief Steward Chung lowered his voice and said, "Wang Yi, when this servant left the palace, your Majesty ordered this servant to pass on a secret edict to you." "Oh, please speak, Gong Gong." Pang Xiao's expression was very serious. Replying to Wang Yi, "Your Majesty's verbal edict states that the north is now stable. The Yuchi faction in the south is still alive and has colluded with the old capital's henchmen. There will be endless trouble in the future. I hope that Wang Yi will use the correct method to resolve this crisis and handle it cleanly and beautifully. Pang Zhao's pupils suddenly shrank, but his expression didn't change. He nodded and said, "Your Majesty is far-sighted. This servant didn't expect this. Very well, please pass on your Majesty's message. This servant will definitely not disappoint your Majesty's trust. Yes, Prince Zhongshuan is loyal and devoted. This servant will definitely pass on your message to your Majesty." Chief Steward Chung nodded. Pang Shao arranged for a guest courtyard for Chief Steward Chung to stay in temporarily. He also personally sent a very generous gift to Chief Steward Chung until he was very happy. Only then did he return to the upper room. After dismissing the servants, the husband and wife sat in front of a candle flame and didn't speak for a long time. After a long time, Qin Yining finally asked, "What did Chief Steward Chung say to you in the corner? Did your Majesty have any orders?" "Yes. Your Majesty doesn't want to keep the Yuchi yin any longer." Qin Yining had already somewhat guessed in his heart. When he heard this, he laughed mockingly. "The North has just stabilized a little, but you can't wait to deal with this matter here. It can be seen how anxious your Majesty is. If I let you deal with the Yuchi yin, won't you be the scapegoat in the end? Your Majesty must have discussed this secret edict with the officials in the imperial court when he made the decision, but he avoided my father. I'm afraid that you might have made preparations in advance. Don't be angry. Things are already like this. It's useless to be angry." Pang Shao smiled comfortingly at Qin Yining and said in a carefree manner, "In any case, I already have enough troubles. One more won't make a difference." Qin Yining was silent for a while. Pang Shao had many enemies to begin with. Li Qiqian was eyeing Pang Shao covetously, and the Yuchi Yin was constantly thinking of ways to stir up trouble. Pang Shao had also offended the Qiu family this time. In addition, Li Qiqian issued a decree to make Yuchi Shujia prince, which was equivalent to indirectly breaking the previous promise. The situation in the south was unstable to begin with. The Yuchi Yin in the old capital had Li Qiqian and the Qiu family behind them. In addition, there was the southern Yin that could explode at any time. Pang Zhao's situation was really deep in a quagmire and could cause trouble at any time. However, your Majesty's decree was for her to be the bride escort ambassador, and she had to return to the capital immediately. At such a time, she couldn't stay by his side. Qin Yining became irritated and his face flushed with anger. How could Pang Shao not be angry? Li Qiqian's series of decrees this time was tantamount to stirring up the water in the south that had just calmed down. He already had many enemies, and now Yuchi Shujia was added to the list. Qin Yining pursed his lips and said slowly after a while, "Also, Magistrate Yang will be transferred back to report on his work. There will definitely be a new magistrate in the old capital. I'm afraid you won't be able to keep what you previously controlled. If you can't control the taxes, what about the soldiers' pay?" There were so many mouths in the army, but Li Qiqian dismissed them with his self-financing. Now that so many things had happened, he still wanted Pang Shao to think of a way to solve the soldiers' pay problem. This was simply too much. Thinking of this, Qin Yining almost cried. Pang Shao naturally thought of this as well. It was fine that he knew the situation was tense, but there was no need to make Qin Yining anxious. Who knew that Qin Yining was so smart that she thought of everything before he could analyze it? Chapter 757. Qin Yining's eyes turned red. She felt as if grass had grown in her heart. She was so upset that she didn't know what to do. She even thought that if she had the ability, she might as well kill Li Qiqian and end all troubles. But she also knew that Pang Shao might not be willing to be a traitor for the sake of the people's stability. After all, the world had been in chaos for long enough, and the people's lives had only been stable for a few days. She understood that Pang Shao didn't want her to worry about him. She also didn't want her irritation to affect him. The more difficult it was, the more she couldn't panic. The more dangerous it was, the more she needed to be calm. "You're right. We'll deal with whatever comes our way. As long as we plan carefully, there's no obstacle that we can't overcome." Seeing that she recovered so quickly, Pang Xiao felt both proud and distressed. If she was a girl who had lived a carefree life since she was young, how could she have such a strong heart? Wasn't the reason why his sister, he was so strong and calm because she had suffered so many hardships at a young age? He married her because he cherished her, wanted to protect her, and wanted to give her a good life. But reality often didn't go as he wished. Since she married him, she had suffered no less hardships than when she was married. She had been kidnapped, hunted down, escaped, and was almost forced to marry him. Her originally healthy body had become weak for various reasons. Even so, she had given birth to 2 sons for him. Even though she had painstakingly carried his children, his mother and grandfather still doubted her chastity. Pang Zhao's heart hurt, as if it was being ruthlessly kneaded and twisted with a pair of big hands. "Sister E." Pang Xiao walked to Qin Yining's side and opened his arms to embrace her. "My sister E, I'm sorry. It's my fault. I'm sorry." Qin Yining was still thinking about the possible consequences of Li Qitian's imperial edicts when she was suddenly embraced by Pang Xiao. She was stunned at first, but after hearing his words, her eyes suddenly became hot. "It doesn't matter. It's not your fault." "How is it not my fault? If the wife suffers, it means the husband is incompetent. It's because of my incompetence that you have to live with me in fear and on edge." Pang Xiao kissed her forehead, the bridge of her nose, and the side of her cheeks. For a moment, he felt that his eyes were a little warm. Qin Yining couldn't help but laugh, but the corners of his eyes were wet. Her entire body was enveloped by his aura, and she did not have the slightest bit of resentment. All she felt was the stability and happiness of being cherished and protected. It seemed that as long as she was with this man, no matter how many things happened, no matter how many difficulties blocked her way, this man would always think of a way to support her. If even you feel that you're incompetent, is there any other man in this world who can survive? Qin Yining hugged his waist and looked up at him. His eyes were bright and gentle. No one, no matter who they are, would be able to do better than you if they were in your position. How many people are envious of you for being able to persevere until now and seize a piece of heaven and earth for yourself, even under so much pressure? A temporary difficulty is nothing. Don't belittle yourself. Pang Zhao's heart was about to be warmed by her. His voice was low and hoarse. "Sister E, you're so nice. You're the one who's really nice. You don't know how many people are envious of you, but I can't." Qin Yining's expression was very serious. Although the situation this time is indeed a little complicated, the side effects of your Majesty's every decree are not difficult to analyze. We should just prepare as usual. Actually, it's not that difficult to deal with. Pang Xiao nodded and tapped the tip of her nose with his finger. "Looking at you, I know you already have a plan." "Yes, I have some guesses and analysis, but I'm not sure if I'm right." Pang Xiao smiled and said, "It doesn't matter. You tell me first. I will make a decision immediately. I'll discuss it with Mr. Xie and Mr. Su later. After all, this is not a success or failure of mine alone." He had relatives, family, friends, and so many loyal subordinates behind him. Not only did he have to be responsible for himself, his family, and his lover, but he also had to be responsible for these loyal subordinates and family members. "That's good." Qin Yining smiled and nodded. She stretched out 3 slender fingers. The hibiscus jade ring on her ring finger shone softly under the orange light, making her skin look like it was creamy. "I think there are 3 points that we need to pay attention to." "What 3 points?" Pang Zhao's gaze fell on her beautiful face, unable to move away. "First, we need to pay attention to Yuqi Shujia's little tricks behind our backs. Yuqi Shujia and the Yuqi Yin have been in contact before. When we first came to the old capital, it was your Majesty who forcefully drove a wedge between them and promised Yuqi Shujia that he would recognize the Southern Yin as an independent country. Only then did the 2 of them sever their superficial alliance. The Yuqi Yin are the orthodox Dayan. What Yuqi Shujia needs is a proper title. He wants a high position, but he doesn't want to bear the infamy. In the past, he would rather let the Yuchi Yin do whatever they wanted in his territory than be radical. He must be a person who cares a lot about his reputation. Now, a person who cares so much about his reputation has been given the title of Imperial Prince Su by Your Majesty. He won't be willing to accept it. In addition, the Yuchi Yin have developed a certain amount of power in the local area. Yuchi Shujia is alone and can't do anything. He's also afraid of Your Majesty, so he doesn't dare to openly cause trouble in the old capital. However, he can play dirty. If I were Yuchi Shujia, I would definitely contact the Yuchi Yin. After all, they are of the same bloodline. No matter how much conflict there is, when it's time to unite against outsiders, don't you think so? My sister, E, is really smart. You're right. Pang Xiao looked at Qin Yining's spirited little face with admiration in his eyes. I will be careful. In fact, even if the Yuchi Yin and Yuchi Shujia cooperate, they may not be truly united. The Yuchi Yin is not the type to play politics. They rely on Gu Shixiao. No matter how sincere Gu Shixiao is, there is no knowing what a person's heart is. There are already disagreements between the master and servant. With the addition of Yuchi Shujia, their camp may not be as impregnable as His Majesty's arrangement. If they are not united, that will be my greatest advantage. You're right, but they may also come up with a sinister trick together. Maybe they will try to figure out Your Majesty's thoughts. As long as they do the same thing as Your Majesty should be able to use them and not suppress them too much. So you have to be careful. Yes, I know. Being able to analyze the current situation with Qin Yining, Pang Xiao felt that he could deal with whatever happened. What else? Also, when we were in Jianchuan City, Qiu Feishan wanted to make you her chosen supporter. Do you still remember? I remember you told me. Pang Xiao nodded. Qin Yining continued. After listening to what Qiu Feishan said about the relationship between the prominent families and the hidden families, although the hidden families are divided and not as powerful as before, in the end, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. Now that Qiu Yuanqing is the leader, he naturally won't choose you as his supporter. I think, among the people in the world who can fight against Li Qiqian, Si Qin of the Tatan is one, Prince Consort Ji is another, and the Orthodox Dayan Yuchi Yin can also be considered one. Si Qin is an outsider, and the Qiu family will not support outsiders, so Si Qin can be ignored. Prince Consort Ji seems to support Your Majesty, just like Lu Heng, so the Qiu family will not support Prince Consort Ji. The rest of the candidates are easy to guess. It is very likely that he will choose to support the Yuchi Yin. So the second thing you need to be careful of is that the Yuchi Yin and Qiu Yuanqing are colluding. Third, we don't know how much power the Qiu family has in the imperial court. They can influence the people in Jianchuan City, and the transfer magistrate Yang is Qiu Feishan's man. Who can be sure that Qiu Yuanqing will not also influence the people in the imperial court of the old capital? What if he also influences the choice of a new magistrate? Magistrate Yang's return to the capital is a bit too sudden. The timing of a new magistrate's appointment is too sensitive. So you also need to be careful of the new magistrate colluding with the Qiu family. If the new magistrate also has connections with the Qiu family, and the Qiu family also chooses the Yuchi Yin to support, then you will face several different opponents twisting into a rope. The Qiu family, the Yuchi Yin, Yuchi Shujia, and the new magistrate, they will tightly surround you in the middle and work together to obstruct you. At this point, Qin Yining felt that Pang Xiao's situation was too dangerous. In the old capital, there may be so many troubles, and in the capital, there was also Li Qiqian who was covetously watching. Li Qiqian was indeed a powerful person. With an imperial edict, he completely stirred up a mess of these forces, and it was possible that several of them would unite to deal with Pang Xiao. With such a scheming method, he really deserved to be on the throne. At that time, who knows how many schemes he had behind the scenes, and how many guilty things he had done, so that he was so afraid of Pang Xiao. Qin Yining's mind turned at lightning speed. However, in the time it took to breathe, Pang Xiao had already put his arm around her shoulder and touched her slightly cold cheek to comfort her. This is also the worst-case scenario. Maybe the situation won't develop to this point. You are right. But according to the worst-case plan, it is better to be prepared. And I also think that with your Majesty's wisdom and means, it is very likely that he will add fuel to the fire behind the scenes, and it is very likely that things will develop like what I just said. Qin Yining stood up and paced back and forth on the ground. Her tall and slender figure was like a spinning top, anxiously spinning around the ground, and finally stopped in front of Pang Xiao. What should I do? I don't want to leave your side. I want to be with you. Pang Xiao's heart was about to melt. He put his arm around her waist and held her in his arms. I also don't want you to leave my sight. Our sister, he only has me in her heart. But have you forgotten the situation you are in? What situation? Qin Yining was stunned and did not react for a moment. Chapter 758. Qin Yining looked up at him. Of course I feel that something is wrong. There are many women with titles in the imperial court who are more senior and experienced than me. There are also the Empress Dowager and the Empress. It's not like there are no other concubines in the palace. What's more, there are also relatives of the emperor. There's really no need for an outsider like me to rush back to welcome Princess Tana. Pang Xiao nodded worriedly. That's not all. Alan has made great contributions and obtained the hereditary title of Duke. He defeated the Tatan's commander-in-chief. In order to slap the Tatan in the face, who do you think is more suitable to welcome the princess sent by the Tatan? Qin Yining suddenly said, Are you talking about the eldest princess? If you want to slap Si Qin and the Tatan in the face, it's naturally the eldest princess. After all, the eldest princess and Prince Consort Ji are husband and wife. Moreover, the eldest princess has the royal bloodline, so her status is even more noble. That's right. Li Helan is idle in the capital, but your majesty insists on making you the envoy. Perhaps he wants to transfer you away from me. He knows what my weakness is. Perhaps he wants to make a fuss about you. Pang Xiao's eyes were gloomy, as if a huge storm was brewing. The surging anger seemed to be able to overturn the roof at any time. Pang Xiao looked at Qin Yining, but a dangerous thought came to his mind. Seeing that he narrowed his eyes, as if he was calculating something and could not hide the murderous aura around him, Qin Yining held his hand and said hesitantly, Zhishi, what do you want to do? Pang Xiao pursed his lips and shook his head. Then he smiled and said, Nothing. I'm just a little angry about the current situation. No, you must be hiding something from me. Qin Yining looked at Pang Xiao and recalled what he had just said. A guess suddenly came to his mind. Don't tell me you want to take drastic measures? Pang Xiao raised his eyebrows and looked at Qin Yining with interest in his eyes. He smiled and said, What do you mean? You want to kill Princess Tana? Pang Xiao didn't deny it. She pulled Qin Yining's hand and sat down beside him. Then, she said in a low voice, If Princess Tana died outside and didn't fall in the capital, then naturally, there wouldn't be a need for an ambassador. You don't have to go back to the capital. Qin Yining looked into Pang Xiao's eyes and confirmed that Pang Xiao was not joking. He knew that Pang Xiao was really worried about her safety. Zhishi, you can't be rash. Qin Yining held Pang Xiao's large hand and rubbed the hard calluses on his palm with his slender and soft fingers. Think about it. Now that our situation is so complicated, we can't complicate things and give your majesty more reasons to target you. Killing people is easier said than done. What's more, in order to negotiate with de Zhou, Si Qin will definitely protect Princess Tana closely. It's impossible to get rid of her without alerting anyone. Once what you do is exposed in front of others, your majesty will have more reasons to kill you. Think about it. How many people will be implicated because of this situation of being attacked from the front and the back? You can't do this, right? Pang Xiao pursed her lips and didn't speak. She was like a stubborn child. Qin Yining continued to speak softly. None of us know what kind of person Princess Tana is. Although she was sent by Tatan to be married to de Zhou, she is still alive. We shouldn't make decisions for her life before we confirm that she has committed a heinous crime and deserves it. It's not so easy to end a person's life. No one should trample on the lives of innocent people. Don't you think so? Pang Xiao lowered her head and nodded after a moment. Yes, I know you are worried about me, but I promise you that I will be careful and protect myself. You just have to leave the guards to me. I will take care of the rest. After returning to the capital, Father will naturally take care of me. Back in Dian, the demon empress wanted to eat my flesh, but didn't I dodge it? So this time, the situation isn't so bad. I can handle it. Trust me. Pang Xiao only held Qin Yining's hand and didn't let go. She also refused to speak. She lowered her head and felt conflicted. Qin Yining smiled and shook her hand. Don't worry. Didn't you say that I am the smartest? Since I am smart, I can also handle this kind of situation. There won't be a problem. Besides, when I was in Tayton, I didn't lose to Inari and Siqin. I really don't care about Princess Tayton. After all, this is Dezhou's land. It's not a place where she can do whatever she wants. Qin Yining persuaded Pang Xiao for a long time before she finally nodded. She sighed and said, I know that you said so much for my sake. What are you talking about? We are a family. Naturally, I'm doing this for the both of us. Pang Xiao sighed softly. She stretched out her arms and hugged Qin Yining again. She sat on her lap and buried her face in her neck. Sister Yi, I don't want to be separated from you. Once you go back, I don't know when I will receive the imperial decree to return to the capital. Qin Yining was also very sad in her heart. In their family of 4, one was going to the capital, the other was in the old capital, and Brother Zhao and Brother Han are going to Nanyan. Even when the 2 children were by her side, Pang Xiao was always not at home because he was busy with military affairs. They had never lived the kind of ordinary life that ordinary people had, where they knew each other and stayed together. Don't think so much. When you solve the matter here, you will naturally return to the capital. Besides, there is nothing wrong with the way things are now. After I return to the capital, I can take care of old madam and old master. I can also fulfill my filial piety in front of the elders. This is quite good. What he cherished most about her was that she always hid her sadness well and never showed it. She always showed her best and strongest side in front of him. She was always so sensible, not arrogant and willful, and never caused trouble for him. However, Pang Xiao hoped that she could be spoiled by him. No matter how strong she was just a weak woman. Pang Xiao hugged Qin Yining and cherished her lips. Take good care of yourself. Don't let yourself be wronged, and don't let yourself get hurt. I know. You too. You have to share weal and woe with the soldiers in the army. When you go back, remember to give yourself special treatment. We won't treat ourselves badly, right? When Pang Xiao heard this, he chuckled and said, I know. I will definitely eat and drink well. Also, if there is anything, discuss it with Sir Xie and Sir Su. In addition, Your Majesty's secret decree asked you to kill the Yu Qi Yan. You have to think carefully about what to do. If you really kill him, Your Majesty will expose the matter later. We'll speak up for you. At that time, most people in the world won't know that you were actually acting on Your Majesty's secret decree. They will only think that you killed the last emperor of the Dian. I'm afraid the impact will be huge. Okay, I will listen to our sister. Pang Xiao nodded obediently. If an outsider saw this, their jaws would definitely drop. Because at this time, he didn't look domineering and fierce at all. He looked like a gentle and loyal dog. The two of them told each other what they could think of. They were afraid that if they separated, they would miss something. That night, none of them slept well. Because they were returning to the capital by imperial decree, there was a time limit. Before dawn the next day, Pang Xiao called his subordinate, Jinghu Wei, to a place and arranged for people to escort Qin Yining back to the capital. Pang Xiao selected the people who escorted Qin Yining to Jianchuan City last time. They followed Qin Yining without any problems. Moreover, they had some friendship with the Silver Mask spy, so it would be more convenient for them to do things. Wang Fei's safety will depend on everyone. Pang Xiao explained the details and finally cupped his hands in salute. Several Jinghu Wei hurriedly avoided Pang Xiao's salute. They returned the salute and said, Wang Yi, don't worry. We will protect Wang Fei with our lives. In the bedroom, Qin Yining folded the clothes he made for Pang Xiao. He put them in a dark blue cloth bag and handed it to Huzi. He told him, take good care of Wang Yi. Although the south is not as cold as the north, it is still very wet and cold. Take these clothes to the military camp. Remember to let him wear them. Yes, I will remember. Huzi hugged the cloth bag and felt a little sad. He looked at Bing Tang, who was packing the luggage. He suddenly understood Pang Zhao's current feelings. Bing Tang and Ji Yun had already finished packing the luggage. Wang Fei, everything is packed. Chief Steward Chung has already prepared the carriage. Just now, someone came to ask if Princess Consort is ready. Qin Yining came back to his senses. He took the lotus petal cloud from Bing Tang and put it on. He smiled and said, I am ready. Let's go. Yes. Everyone followed Qin Yining out of the door. When they reached the entrance of the courtyard, Qin Yining looked back at the door and plaque of Snow Pear Courtyard. This huge courtyard was where her maiden family lived. Although her maiden family was not at home now, many of her memories of leaving the mountains and returning to the city were gathered here. Once she left, she did not know when she would come back again. Qin Yining suppressed the bitterness in his heart and smiled as he led the people to the main door. Pang Xiao had already exchanged greetings with Chief Chung at the door for a long time. Chief Chung was a transparent person. He was already afraid of Pang Xiao. In addition, Pang Xiao had given him a generous reward. Qin Yining was of noble status and had even become Your Majesty's personal envoy. He did not dare to slight him at all. When he saw Qin Yining come out, he quickly went forward and bowed. This servant pays respects to Wang Fei. Qin Yining quickly moved to the side and returned the greeting. Chief Chung, please don't be so polite. I will have to rely on Chief Chung to take care of me on this journey. Don't mention it. It is this servant's duty to serve Wang Fei. Wang Fei, please don't be so polite. After exchanging greetings, Qin Yining's gaze landed on Pang Xiao. They did not sleep well last night. Today, both of them had faint dark circles under their eyes. Pang Xiao smiled at Qin Yining. Don't worry. When you return to the capital, just focus on sharing Your Majesty's worries. I will complete Your Majesty's orders as soon as possible and return to the capital. Chapter 759. With one hand behind his back, Pang Xiao straightened his back and extended an arm to support him. The two acted out the mutual respect perfectly, but in their hearts, they both wanted to hug each other right now. Qin Yining sat in the carriage. Pang Xiao also mounted his horse and led his men to follow behind. This king is also going back to the barracks. I'll send you off. Pang Xiao said he would send them off, but he sent Qin Yining and the secret envoy back to the capital more than 100 li away from the old capital. This was the opposite direction from the barracks. If they continued to walk, they would be too far away from the barracks. Urging his horse to walk beside Qin Yining's carriage, Pang Xiao said with a smile, Go home and be at ease. Wait for me to return to the capital. Pang Xiao was dressed in black. His face was as white as jade and his eyes were like dots of lacquer. Under the morning light, he was so handsome that he didn't seem like a mortal. Qin Yining lifted the curtain and smiled at him with his head tilted. I know. Don't worry. Pang Xiao looked deeply at Qin Yining. His eyes were filled with love, reluctance, and even more helplessness. His large hand touched Qin Yining's slightly cold face. Pang Xiao instructed Ji Yun and the others in the carriage. Take good care of Wang Fei. The weather is getting colder. The further north we go, the colder it gets. Make sure Wang Fei is well dressed. Don't catch a cold. Yes, Wang Yi, don't worry. Ji Yun, Bing Tang, and the others all smiled and agreed. Their voices were very pleasant to the ears. Pang Xiao didn't have any reason to stay any longer. He spurred his horse to bid farewell to Chung Zhongwan. Then, he took a dozen of his men and spurred their horses to gallop along the official road in the direction of the military camp. Qin Yining sat upright in the carriage, feeling lost. They had just separated, but she was already missing him. The journey back to the capital was very smooth. Qin Yining was accompanied by a silver-masked secret agent and his personal maidservant. In addition, there were 6 Jinghu Wei guards arranged by Pang Xiao to surround the carriage. Their safety was guaranteed. Occasionally, they encountered some brave men, but they were beaten and fled. After General Manager Chung received benefits from Pang Xiao, he was very polite to Qin Yining. Qin Yining was not a domineering person, so he was also very polite to General Manager Chung. Gradually, the two of them became more familiar with each other and maintained a mutual respect for each other. However, with Your Majesty's decree, they didn't dare to delay on the road. They still had to eat and sleep in the open as they hurried to the capital. Although Qin Yining said that she was going to be the wedding ambassador, she wasn't a proper lady after all. She learned the rules from the retired old nannies of the Yin dynasty when she was in the Dian imperial court. The rules and etiquette of the Yin dynasty were naturally different from those of the Zhou. The etiquette that the Zhou followed was also learned from Beiji, so it couldn't be considered true ancient etiquette. After all, the Zhou had only been established for 6 years. Including the Empress, Empress Dowager, and Princess Royal, they could at most be considered landladies. Compared to the well-educated ladies of the royal family, their etiquette was unbearable. This time, after defeating the Titan, the Zhou wanted to show the power of the country. They also wanted to show outsiders the ancient etiquette and elegance of the Zhou. Naturally, they wouldn't be careless. General Manager Chung smiled and said, "So after the Wang Fei returns to the capital, she should first learn the ancient etiquette while waiting for Princess Tana." Qin Yining nodded and said, "That's right. The Titan occupied the north. Since the Beiji era, the border has been closed every year. The common people have suffered greatly. Now that a Zhou's army has finally defeated the Titan, the common people are at peace. We can't do anything to the main culprits who have surrendered, but it is essential to show them the etiquette and elegance of the Zhou. This is also a way to show the power of the country." Yes, Wang Fei is right. General Manager Cheng nodded repeatedly and admired Qin Yining in his heart. Qin Yining's thinking and bearing were indeed the pillow of Prince Zhongshuan. Her words were watertight. Wang Fei is indeed an intelligent person. Your Majesty's eyes are as sharp as torches. This servant really admires you. Her words flattered both Qin Yining and Li Qitian. Qin Yining and Chief Steward Chung traveled together, so she had figured out this person's character. A eunuch who could sit in his position was definitely not someone who acted impulsively. He was most particular about being tactful and didn't offend anyone. He always left a way out. Perhaps in the future, he would be able to create good karma for himself. Qin Yining sometimes couldn't help but think that perhaps she should learn from General Manager Chung how to conduct herself. Because sometimes she felt that ever since she married Pang Xiao, she had someone to rely on. It seemed that she didn't know how to be tactful and flexible. Her temper also became more irritable. This wasn't good. It was easy to get into trouble. The journey back to the capital was long. The closer they got to the capital, the colder the weather became. Qin Yining brought a thick sweater with her when she left the capital. She also often held an exquisite hand warmer in her hands. Even so, Qin Yining often felt cold. Wang Fei's body is damaged after giving birth. That's why she's afraid of the cold. After we return to the capital and settle down, I still have to take good care of Wang Fei's health. Don't think that you don't care just because you're fine. Why don't you think about how old you are now? Bing Tang placed an exquisite hand warmer next to Qin Yining's feet as she nagged. Qin Yining laughed and said, "Bing Tang is so caring. I can't even bear to give you to that blockhead Huzi. Aya, why is Wang Fei like this? I'm concerned about you out of the kindness of my heart, but you turn around and make fun of me." Bing Tang's face was as red as a cooked shrimp. She lowered her head and didn't look into Qin Yining's eyes. Ji Yun, Xian Yun, Qiu Lu, and Lian Xiaozhou at the side couldn't help but laugh. Everyone talked at once and made fun of Bing Tang. Qin Yining gently pinched Ji Yun's and Xian Yun's cheeks and said with a smile, "Don't just focus on making fun of Bing Tang. You're not young anymore. When we return, I'll be careful and find you a good family. I won't let you cast pearls before swine." Is Wang Fei crazy? Why did you think of matchmaking today? Xian Yun's face was even redder than Bing Tang's. She said angrily, "If we leave, who will serve you?" Qiu Lu also said, "I won't leave Wang Fei's side." Qin Yining smiled and said, "Idiot, you can all come back to my side in the future and be my wife. How can you not marry for the rest of your life?" find a reliable husband, and live happily with each other in the future. Just like Wang Yi and I, we can support each other. Isn't that good? Also, Wang Yi and I can be your support. I don't believe that there will be anyone who won't open their eyes and dare to neglect you in the future. The women's faces turned red from Qin Yining's words, but they were all very moved. They all knew that Qin Yining was sincerely planning for their happiness. As time passed, the closer they got to the capital, the closer it got to winter. The snow this year was especially heavy. Although they were returning to the capital by imperial decree and were very nervous on the road, they were still delayed by the heavy snow. As a result, when the group returned to the capital and arrived at Dexing town, which was half a day's journey away from the capital, it was already the afternoon of the 3rd day of the 11th month. Chief Steward Chung was wearing thick woolen collar clothes. He crossed his arms and stepped through the snow, squeaking as he walked to Qin Yining's carriage. He smiled and said, "Wang Fei." Qin Yining heard the noise and quickly pushed open the window. He smiled and said, "Chief Steward Chung, Wang Fei, now that we've arrived at Dexing town, we'll stay here for the night and tidy up a bit. Tomorrow, we can directly enter the city." Chief Steward Chung is very thoughtful. "We'll do as you say." Qin Yining nodded. "Yes." Chief Steward Chung cupped his hands and ordered the group to head towards Dexing town. The town wasn't very big. One could see the end of the main street at a glance. The only inn in the town didn't have any courtyards. There were only single rooms on the 2nd floor. The group of people was arranged to stay in the inn. Some of the accompanying imperial bodyguards had to go down and squeeze into a bunk. But when they thought that they could enter the city tomorrow and that the arduous journey was finally over, everyone was in a good mood. After Qin Yining took a bath, he prepared the clothes he would wear the next day in advance. He sat in front of the lamp with his half-dried hair draped over his shoulders and sewed. The servant girls were already very tired. Qin Yining sent them to rest quickly. "We still have to wake up early tomorrow. After we enter the city, there's still a lot of things to do. We have to rest well." The people at Bingtang were so tired that they couldn't open their eyes. Hearing this, they didn't refuse and went to sleep. Qin Yining only left Xiao Lu to sew the night in the outer room. Qin Yining sewed the outer robe in her hand stitch by stitch. This was the spring clothing she had made for Pang Xiao. She had planned for him to wear it over the new year. She wasn't good at embroidering complicated patterns. She had planned to let an embroiderer do it in the future. She could only make ready-made clothing. In any case, Pang Xiao wouldn't mind if her stitches were too thick. She just had to be careful not to drop the needle into the clothes and prick him. Every day, she could only let her thoughts run wild when she was sewing clothes for him under the lamp. In front of others, she didn't want to reveal her emotions, especially when there were so many people around her. She couldn't let her negative emotions affect others. She didn't know how the situation was in the old capital. She was with Chief Steward Chung, so she had to be careful when contacting Pang Xiao. She was afraid that she would leave behind something that could be used against her. She was also afraid that there would be spies among the people around Chief Steward Chung who would specifically pass on information to Li Qitian. Qin Yining sighed softly. She blinked her sore eyes and slowly tidied up her needlework. She also planned to go to bed. At this moment, a soft voice suddenly came from the back window. "Wang Fei." It was Jingzhe. Qin Yining hurriedly grabbed a piece of clothing and put it on. She walked to the window and whispered through a layer of paper, "What's wrong?" "Zhong Yibao wants to see you." "Lu Heng?" Qin Yining thought for a moment and whispered, "Where is he?" "He's downstairs." Qin Yining thought for a moment. Her room was not far from Chief Steward Cheng's room. The floor of the inn had not been repaired for a long time, so it would creak when one walked on it. If someone came in through the front door, they would definitely be discovered. However, after learning about the secret between the Chiu family and the Lu family about the hidden and prominent families, Qin Yining really wanted to see Lu Heng and find out what he was thinking. She just didn't know if Lu Heng had someone following him this time. Qin Yining fell into deep thought. Jingzhe, who was outside the window, didn't rush her and waited patiently. He squatted by the window and held the window frame with one hand. His figure was reflected on the paper window, as if he had turned into a stone statue. After a moment, Qin Yining made a decision. Think of a way to not alarm others. Ask Zhong Yibo to come up. Chapter 760. The silver-masked secret agents used to do dirty and tiring work. So what kind of world had they not seen before? It wasn't difficult for them to bring someone in without alerting anyone else. Qin Yining had already put on his usual honey-colored robe and went to the outer room to wake Xiao Lu up in case someone came in and woke her up. It would be bad if she screamed out loud. Xiao Lu had an ashamed expression on her face. She took out a hairband and carefully tied Qin Yining's half-dry hair into a loose bun. She then took out a white fox fur coat and draped it over her shoulders. It's all this servant's fault. This servant should have been the one to go to bed, but this servant was so asleep that I didn't even know what happened. It's really my fault. Xiao Lu lowered her voice and hurriedly apologized, but she was also afraid that Chief Steward Cheng's men would overhear her. What are you saying? Don't think too much about it. Qin Yining patted the back of Xiao Lu's hand. Jing just secretly told me. Think about his status. If he deliberately didn't want anyone to find out, but you found out, wouldn't he be hurt? Xiao Lu couldn't help but smile when she heard this. She felt a bit better. Qin Yining had always treated people like them with leniency and never fussed over small matters. However, the more lenient their master was, the more they shouldn't neglect him. Xiao Lu inwardly made up her mind. She handed over a hand warmer that was just right for him and chose an inconspicuous corner to stand in. At this moment, there was a rustling sound outside the window. Xiao Lu hurriedly went to open the window. Jingzhe brought Lu Heng inside. They landed soundlessly. Jingzhe turned around to close the window. He was careful not to make the slightest sound. He immediately hid in the corner and didn't plan on leaving. It was obvious that he was afraid that the two weak women in the room would be in danger. Lu Heng shook off the snow on his rat fur cloak and looked up at Qin Yining with a smile. Under the warm orange light, half of Qin Yining's palm-sized face was hidden in the white fox fur collar. Her skin was as lustrous as jade, and her long hair hung softly behind her back, loosely tied up with a hairband. Her slender and fair hands were holding a small, delicate heater the size of an apple. She just stood there without saying a word, like a painting, which made people's hearts melt. Lu Heng's smile deepened. He lowered his voice and said, "Long time no see." Qin Yining also laughed softly and said, "Long time no see." Second Master Lu seems to be doing well. Hearing that she didn't call him Zhong Yibo, but called him Second Master Lu like how she did in the desert, Lu Heng felt warmth spread from his heart to his fingertips. Even the blood flowing through his veins was heating up. Originally, he had some hesitation and regret when he came in the middle of the night, but now he didn't have the slightest bit of regret. "I'm still the same. You look pretty good too. I heard that you have 2 sons now." Yes. When she left the capital, she was pregnant. Now, the 2 babies were almost 1 year old. Qin Yining's smile became even gentler. He reached out his hand and invited her. "Let's sit down and talk." "Okay." Qin Yining and Lu Heng went inside and sat down. Jingzhe turned off the lights to the dimmest and covered the windows with curtains to prevent people outside from seeing the shadows in the room. Qin Yining and Lu Heng lowered their voices and talked with ease. "I heard that you and Wang Ye's life in the south wasn't very smooth." "It was okay. I just took care of the children. I didn't need to do anything. Wang Yi took care of the important matters." Qin Yining avoided the important matters. Lu Heng knew that she wouldn't tell him about the things around Pang Xiao, so he tactfully avoided the topic and straightforwardly stated the purpose of his visit. "When I heard that you were about to return to the capital as the wedding ambassador, I arranged for people to keep an eye on the news of your return." Qin Yining nodded. "I asked around. Princess Tana, who came for the political marriage this time, is Inari Khan's biological sister. Although she is born of a concubine, she has a good relationship with Inari Khan. She has always been very dependent on her sister. When Inari Khan passed away, Princess Tana cried until her eyes were almost blind. I'm worried that you will be killed if you become the wedding ambassador." Qin Yining smiled bitterly. "How could I not know the danger? but your majesty's decree is as such. I have no other choice but to accept the decree. Fortunately, this is the capital of Dezhou, not Tayton. Princess Tana came for the political marriage. She should also prioritize peace, right? I don't think she will do anything to me. Lu Heng shook his head. If she really wants to harm someone, there are many ways. You are too naive. The methods of the women in the palace are more vicious than the men. Tana is not so easy to deal with. Thank you very much. Qin Yining's eyes curved with a smile. I got it. I'll be careful. She never wanted to let down the sincere concern of others. Pang Xiao and Lu Heng's positions were becoming more and more different, but after all, they were friends who had gone through thick and thin together. Lu Heng felt as if he had been patted by the soft paw of a cat, which made him want to hold the kitten and spoil her. In his eyes, Qin Yining was a beautiful and delicate kitten. Lu Heng's eyes became particularly soft, and his low voice became more gentle. I will help you think of a way. Qin Yining felt that the atmosphere was thick and ambiguous. She was vigilant and nodded uncomfortably, her smile fading a little. Thank you for your kindness, but there is no need. There is no need for you to get involved in this muddy water because of me. Your situation is not easy. She was naturally talking about the Chiu family. Seeing that Qin Yining seemed to be vigilant, Lu Heng's affection for her increased. She was in danger, but she was still loyal to her husband. She didn't need to use the charming methods of many women to achieve her goals. He always knew that her character was excellent. After all, many women flocked to him when they saw him because he was the head of the Lu family, your majesty's favorite, and also had the title of Zhongyiba. He had a promising future, but Qin Yining had never been like this. It seemed that no matter how much fame he had, in her eyes, he was just him. The more loyal Qin Yining was to Pang Xiao and was unmoved by his goodwill, the more difficult it was for him to give up and the more he liked her. What's more, she also cared about him and knew that he was in a tense situation. You and I are friends in adversity. In Zhou's territory, there are still many things that I can do. You don't need to be polite with me. As for my matters, how can the other families not suppress and envy the Lu family? I'm already used to it. Lu Heng smiled bitterly. Qin Yining was also speechless for a while. When she had first come to the capital with her father, even a girl from a side branch of the Lu family could be so domineering. In addition, the Lu family had once provided Li Qitian with a large sum of money and had a close relationship with the imperial family. For her, that little girl was like a mountain that was difficult to shake. Step by step, the Lu family was still so large. If she didn't know that there was the Chiu family behind them, as well as a hidden family trying to get close to the court, she might have thought that the Lu family really was the head of all the large families. Did Lu Heng know about the hidden and prominent families? Was it only the Chiu family that passed down the family teachings? Or did the Lu family also have them? Questions circled around in her mind, but she couldn't ask them without knowing the situation. Qin Yining could only try to ask, is the situation in the court different from before? Lu Heng liked Qin Yining a lot. Moreover, there wasn't anyone who could talk to him about these things. He naturally nodded and said, it is indeed different. Let me say something that you might not like to hear. In the past, the most influential person in the court was Prince Zhongshuan. Among the civil officials, your majesty trusted your father the most. But now the situation is very different. This is understandable. Now the most favored person should be Prince Consort Ji. Qin Yining deliberately didn't comment on the civil officials. Yes, Lu Heng nodded and said with emotion. Prince Consort Ji insisted on saving the Tayton at Mount Chongshan, which was a meritorious service. In addition, Prince Consort Ji defeated the Tayton and made your majesty bow down to him, which solved a big problem for your majesty. He is also a relative of the imperial family, so naturally he is the most trusted by your majesty. As for the status of the Lu family, it is also different from before. Lu Heng took the initiative to talk about his own affairs. Perhaps the Lu family has been in the limelight for too many years, so a tall tree attracts the wind. Many old officials in Beiji don't like the Lu family now, and even those who are on good terms with the Liu family will be excluded. You also know how to use people. For example, if you can't always protect the people around you, they will also have opinions. Qin Yining nodded, and then Lu Heng sighed softly. In her heart, she was shocked by the information revealed in Lu Heng's words. Originally, the two sides didn't interfere with each other, but now one side suddenly targeted the Liu family. It was obvious that someone was behind this. Combined with what she knew, the Qiu family was very likely to be involved with the old officials in Beiji. And Lu Heng didn't seem to know about the Qiu family's existence. He seemed to attribute all the crux of the problem to the conflict between the aristocratic family and the old officials. This was very scary. The Liu family was an aristocratic family with more than 100 years of history. It had enormous power and complicated relationships, so it couldn't be weak. However, such a family with such a deep foundation, after showing signs of falling out with the old officials in Beiji, didn't know that the Empress Mother had other people behind this. Qin Yining wanted to ask Lu Heng if he knew about the relationship between the reclusive and prominent families, but she couldn't ask about this. She couldn't help but guess. Could it be that only the reclusive family knew about the alternation between the prominent and reclusive families, and the prominent family didn't know about it? Qin Yining's eyes showed that she was deep in thought. In Lu Heng's eyes, she looked like she was worried about him. Thinking about it, even if she didn't have any romantic feelings for him, she really cared about him and treated him as a friend. Lu Heng felt like he was soaking in a hot spring, and his whole body felt warm and comfortable in the winter. If it weren't for his rationality, he would have gone up to Qin Yining and hugged her. At this moment, a series of knocks on the door suddenly rang out. In the silence of the night, the few people who had their own thoughts were all startled. Qin Yining suddenly stood up and looked at the door cautiously. Then she immediately took off her cloak, rolled over, and covered herself with the quilt. Jingzhe also jumped and hid in the shadow of the cabinet. Lu Heng's face darkened slightly. He clenched his fists and his whole body tensed up. He tiptoed behind the curtain in the corner. Chapter 761. Everyone held their breaths and listened attentively. The person speaking outside the door was a young child. His voice was not loud, as if he was afraid of disturbing the master. Older sister, do you have an older sister here who knows how to treat illnesses? Chief Steward Chung has a high fever. It's already so late, there's really nothing we can do. Qin Yining recognized that this was the young eunuch who had always been by Chief Steward Cheng's side. She was young, about 8 or 9 years old. Xiao Lu turned around to look at Qin Yining. Qin Yining thought for a moment, then nodded and made a hand gesture. Xiao Lu said in a low voice, "There's a Bing Tang girl, but she's not the one doing the night shift. She's next door. Be quiet. The Wang Fei is already asleep. If we disturb the Wang Fei's rest, none of us will have a good time." Yes, thank you, older sister." The young eunuch outside the door looked like she was about to cry, and quickly and gently pushed the door open. A moment later, there was a light knock on the door next door. Jingzhe walked to the window and lifted the curtain. He pushed open the window and looked outside. He saw that the snow was heavier than when they stayed at the hotel. The faint footprints outside the window were mostly covered. He asked in a low voice, "Wang Fei, it's snowing heavily outside." Qin Yining immediately understood Jingzhe's meaning. The snow was heavy, so it was naturally easier to cover their tracks. Qin Yining sat on the edge of the bed and looked inquiringly at Lu Heng. She had been in a hurry to hide, so her long hair was slightly messy. Although her clothes were neat, the way she hugged the quilt still made Lu Heng's heart sway, and he had some wild thoughts. He hurriedly collected his thoughts, walked to the bedside, and bent down to get closer to Qin Yining. He said in a low voice, "Don't worry. Although the marriage is inevitable, and you've already received the imperial edict, so you must be the bridal envoy, I can still make some moves. I heard that your majesty wants to use this opportunity to show off our country's etiquette. After you return to the capital, your majesty will probably assign a teacher to you to learn ancient etiquette. During the reception process, your majesty will also arrange for some palace servants to accompany you. I will arrange for people to receive you. I have already arranged for these people. You could trust them. When the time comes, they will take the initiative to meet you. After saying this, Lu Heng gave Qin Yining a reassuring smile. He straightened up and walked to the window, motioning for Jingzhe to take him away. Jingzhe looked at Lu Heng with an unfriendly gaze. He could see clearly what Lu Heng was up to. He was very disdainful of Lu Heng's intention to steal someone else's woman. Qin Yining got off the bed and said in a low voice, "I appreciate your kindness, but this kind of thing can be big or small, so I can't trouble you. You'd better not make any arrangements." Lu Heng frowned slightly and turned to look at Qin Yining. His eyes were filled with disappointment. He knew that with Qin Yining's intelligence, no matter how slow she was when it came to relationships, she would definitely be able to tell what he meant. Qin Yining was a righteous person. His feelings for Pang Xiao drove him crazy with jealousy. If she was convinced of this, she would probably never give him a chance to get close to her again. Lu Heng smiled and said politely and with restraint, "Friends are just helping each other out. Who knows, I might need your help in the future. When the time comes, I hope that you won't refuse me if it's within your power." Without waiting for Qin Yining to speak, Lu Heng motioned for Jingzhe to take him out. Jingzhe couldn't wait for him to leave, so he didn't think too much about it. He quietly opened the window and led Qin Yining out. Qin Yining frowned and chased after him. He felt that it wouldn't be good if they didn't talk things out. However, the other party didn't even give him a chance to speak. If he did, it would seem like he was overthinking things. With this in mind, Qin Yining could only give up for the time being. He thought that if there was a chance in the future, they would talk things out. After Jingzhe sent Lu Heng away, he didn't return. Qiu Lu helped Qin Yining undress and made the bed for him. Her brows were furrowed. "Princess Consort, that Princess Tana is really difficult to deal with. You must be careful." After hearing Lu Heng's words and thinking about the death of the Khan Anari, Qiu Lu broke out in a cold sweat for Qin Yining. Unfortunately, she was just a servant girl with no ability. Although she wanted to, she couldn't do anything. Qin Yining laughed. It seemed that Lu Heng's words had scared this servant girl. "Don't worry, I know. When we return to the Fu, you still have to tie me up to take care of the property. You also have to restrain those naughty servant girls in the courtyard. If I go to learn the rules, you have to be observant and alert. Help me keep an eye on things. Also, in a few days, Master Zhong will return to the capital. At that time, he might send a pile of account books. You have to help me keep an eye on them." "Yes, Princess Consort, don't worry. I will definitely take care of these things." Qiu Lu nodded heavily. She was steady in her work and was one of the first servants to follow Qin Yining. She was like Qin Yining's lock. Whatever was placed in Qiu Lu's care, she would keep it in check. After hearing Qin Yining's words, Qiu Lu immediately smiled. She felt that she was still somewhat useful. She wasn't completely a burden to her master. Qiu Lu sat down on the footstool and asked in a low voice, "Just now, that little attendant came to ask about Bing Tang. I don't know if Chief Steward Chung discovered something, or if it was just a coincidence." Qin Yining looked pensive. "I can't be sure. If it wasn't a coincidence, then he might have discovered something and deliberately ordered someone to warn me. But it doesn't matter. Even if he heard the commotion, he wouldn't know what exactly happened. Who didn't have a few secrets with their status? It was fine if no one heard the exact content of their conversation." Qiu Lu saw that Qin Yining was so calm and didn't dwell on it any longer. She smiled and said, "Princess Consort should sleep. It's already late." Qin Yining nodded his head. Originally, he couldn't fall asleep because he missed Pang Xiao and his 2 children. After tossing and turning, he really did feel sleepy. The next morning, the heavy snow still hadn't stopped. Ji Yun and Xian Yun went to the inn's kitchen to bring back the food boxes. Lian Xiaozhou and Qiu Lu helped Qin Yining dress up in the room. Last night, Bing Tang Jijia was called over in the middle of the night. Chief Steward Chung had a high fever. Bing Tang Jijia only came back to sleep for a short while. She woke up early and left again. Lian Xiaozhou complained. Because of that Chief Steward Chung, she didn't have a good night's rest in Bing Tang. Lian Xiaozhou could speak very well now. It was all thanks to Bing Tang Jijia, who taught her patiently. He even taught her how to identify medicinal herbs and how to treat patients. He said that it was good for a girl to have more skills. She knew that whether it was Qin Yining or Bing Tang Jijia, they were all sincerely good to her. She also sincerely wanted what was best for them. Qin Yining smiled at Lin Xiaozhou from the mirror and said, "It's okay. We can go home after we enter the city today. There are many doctors in the city. They can all treat Chief Steward Cheng. When the time comes, Bing Tang Jijia can go back and have a good rest." "Okay." Lin Xiaozhou nodded heavily. She obediently opened the drawer of her makeup box and asked Qin Yining what kind of hair accessories to wear. After she finished dressing up and eating breakfast, Bing Tang Jijia came back from Chief Steward Cheng's place. Qin Yining smiled and asked, "How is Chief Steward Cheng? His fever has gone down." Bing Tang sat down tiredly next to Qin Yining and sighed with emotion. "It's not easy to be a palace maid. You have to avoid being sick. Director Cheng caught a cold on the way, but because you were in a hurry, you didn't have a good rest. The closer you come to the north, the colder the weather is, and the worse your condition is. Last night, you had a high fever and couldn't find a doctor. You were afraid that you would be delayed and go back to report." When Qin Yining heard this, he was slightly relieved. It seemed that last night was really a coincidence. Not long after, the courtyard of the inn became lively. The attendants began to prepare the carriages. Chief Steward Cheng personally came to knock on the door. "Princess Consort, we can set off now." Qin Yining heard that Chief Steward Cheng's voice was still very hoarse. He said with concern, "Chief Steward, you have to take care of your body. After you get on the carriage, take some medicine and sleep. We are already very close to the capital." Chief Steward Cheng smiled and nodded. He said gratefully, "Thank you for your concern, Princess Consort." Chief Steward Cheng did his best for your majesty. It's really touching. Chief Steward Cheng shook his head repeatedly and said in fear and trepidation, "This servant is not worthy of Princess Consort's praise. This servant is just doing his best to do his job." As he spoke, an attendant came in to report that the carriages were ready. The group of people left the inn and boarded the carriages separately. The long procession meandered along the white official road. As far as the eye could see, it was a vast expanse of whiteness. The snowflakes were blown by the northern wind. Jinghu Wei and the secret agents, who were riding on the horses, could feel that their skin was about to be cut by knives. Qin Yining and the others squeezed into the carriage. They could feel the cold wind seeping in through the gaps between the carriage door and the bed. The soles of their feet were so cold that they were about to cramp. "Why is it so cold this winter? It seems to be colder than last year." Ji Yin rubbed her hands. Bing Tang shrunk his neck and hugged the hand warmer. He shook his head and said, "Luckily, the situation in the capital is still stable. It's not like the old capital where there are so many refugees. If the old capital had such weather, I'm afraid many people would have frozen to death." Qin Yining nodded. Actually, at this time, she still felt a little emotional. Although Li Qitian's character was not good, he opened up new territory and established Dezhou. He gave the people of Dezhou a relatively stable life. This was also the reason why Pang Xiao did not want to see a war break out. To the common people, it made no difference to them who was the emperor. The most important thing was whoever could bring them a stable life and prevent them from living in constant fear of losing their lives. That was why Pang Xiao did not want to break this balance and let the common people suffer an undeserved disaster. She thought of Pang Xiao again. Qin Yining sighed softly and closed his eyes to rest. He did not feel anything when they were together all day long. Once they were apart, his heart felt like it was being pulled far away by a silk thread. It did not hurt, but he could not find a place to settle down. Because of the heavy snow, the road was difficult to travel on. When the group arrived at the city gate, it was already 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Before they could get close to the city gate, Jing's voice came from outside the carriage. "Wang Fei, it seems to be master in front." Qin Yining was stunned when she heard this. She pushed open the carriage door. Through the thick curtain of snow, she saw 2 blue carriages parked in the distance. Qin Huaiyuan was wearing a black fur coat and a fur hat of the same color. He was standing beside the carriage and looking into the distance. The black fur coat was covered in snow. He was almost a snowman. Stop the carriage. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.